Chapter 368. The leopard girl's vision was temporarily blocked. Although the burning sensation on her eyeballs had been affecting her judgment, she still managed to dodge Diana's attack by relying on her beastly intuition. The blind leopard girl didn't know that Thea had thrown a lot of grease spells. When she dodged Diana's pounce, she naturally took a step back. The soles of her feet felt as if she had stepped on a lump of grease, slippery. Normally, with her balance, she could run 2 steps on the grease, but now the swelling pain in her eyeballs seriously destroyed her sense of balance. She stumbled to maintain her balance. Diana's sword slashed her shoulder, causing yellow blood to gush out. Thea saw that they had already started fighting, so she put away her dark magic. This was something that Diana had discussed with her in advance. The leopard girl didn't have a deep relationship with her in this spacetime, but they were more or less friends. Diana felt that she had an obligation to help her. However, as the saying goes, one is marked by the company one keeps. The upright Diana was also influenced by Sia to become a little two-faced. Her request was to create a fair battlefield, and Sia completed this task very faithfully. Within a radius of a few miles, Thea released nearly 50 spells related to speed reduction. Later, she was afraid that the leopard girl could still turn the tables, so she took advantage of the fall and added a gravity spell and a speed reduction spell on the leopard girl. She dug 2 deep pits on the leopard girl's path and pulled a few ropes between a few trees at ankle height. She used several tricks to deal with blind people. Even if the leopard girl escaped alive, she would still have a psychological shadow when she thought of today's scene. At this moment, the leopard lady could not see anything. It was as if there was an iron rod stirring in her head. There were sundries under her feet, and her body seemed to be carrying dozens of kilograms of lead. This was the fair duel that Sia had created for her lover. Putting away her dark magic, Thea finally saw the leopard girl's glory. Half-human, half-beast reputation was well-deserved. She had sharp ears and sharp teeth, and the nails on her hands and feet were replaced by sharp claws. Her body seemed to be covered with a layer of yellowish animal skin, full of spots, and a long tail behind her. According to her image, she could be given a savage index of 70 points. The only pity was that her yellow vertical pupils, which were supposed to emit a fierce glint, were currently smearing her overall image. Facing the pouncing Diana, the leopard girl no longer had the time to rub her eyes. Her sore eyeball muscles caused tears to flow down uncontrollably. Diana's current attack rhythm was very strong. She didn't blindly attack, giving her opponent the illusion that the difference in strength wasn't big. The leopard girl, who didn't have much combat experience, was fooled. She knew that there were 2 enemies nearby. She didn't know what Thea was doing, so she could only desperately attack Diana, trying to create a one-on-one situation. Diana's defense was the best in the multiverse. At least, Thea had never seen anyone play a shield better than her. Facing the leopard girl whose speed had been reduced by half, she fought very calmly. Block, parry, dodge, she perfectly fused her movement and martial arts. If it wasn't for the wrong timing, Thea would have applauded. The leopard girl couldn't attack for a long time, and was dragged down by the messy environment around her. Whether it was physical strength or mental strength, they were all consumed quickly. She realized that she couldn't continue fighting like this. After forcing Diana to retreat with a feint, she didn't care about the direction. She turned 180 degrees and prepared to escape. However, she had only taken 2 steps before she was stuck by something sticky. If she sprinted with all her strength, she would definitely be able to break through the cobweb, but she had only run 2 steps. How could she have the speed? She was an agility type, not a strength type. Her arms swung widely, and with her sharp claws, she forcefully split open the cobweb that stuck to her. But this delay of a second allowed Diana to catch up. "Diana, let me go. Aren't we friends?" The leopard girl didn't know how many cobwebs there were around her. The big pit on the ground and the tripping ropes made her sick. She didn't want to stay in this broken place for a second longer. Her cunning nature made it impossible for her to rush out by force, so she immediately changed to a soft one. "Minerva, I'm helping you. Come back with me and accept the trial. You can't continue to be wrong," Diana said very sincerely. As expected, it's Diana. I think it smells a little like you. I didn't expect to guess right. The leopard girl's nose twitched twice. Is this the true strength you've been hiding? My God said that you're a long-lived species, an existence that's higher than us ordinary people. Isn't that right? Diana fell silent. No matter how she answered this question, it wasn't appropriate. She chose to keep her mouth shut. The one who created this battlefield is your companion, right? He's also a supernatural person, right? I'm so envious. The leopard girl's tone was stern. It didn't sound like envy at all. Instead, it sounded like jealousy, a jealousy that went deep into her bones. Come back with me and redeem your sins. You still have hope. Diana tried to bring the topic back. Hee. The leopard girl's smile was incomparably terrifying. She was 30% human and 70% beast. Her humanity was rapidly disappearing. Redeem me? What sins did I commit? I've already become like this. I can't go back. Put away your love, Diana. You can't save me. The leopard girl berated sternly. Her expression was deranged as she used both her hands and feet to fiercely attack Diana. She had already recovered some of her vision and stamina during the conversation. She felt that Diana's strength was about the same as when she was weak just now. She wanted to suddenly exert her strength and finish off Diana. However, she had underestimated Diana and overestimated herself. A round of storm-like attacks were all blocked, and the little stamina she had recovered was wasted again. How can you be so strong? I sacrificed so much, but I'm still not as good as you. At this moment, the leopard girl was wrapped in anger. Jealousy, indignation, injustice, and all kinds of negative emotions gathered together. Her attacks became sharper and sharper. She had already forgotten to run away. She only wanted to follow her bloodthirsty desire and kill Diana. The negotiation was fruitless. Diana felt that she had already lived up to that little bit of friendship. Finally, she no longer held back and used the power of the Guardian Silver Bracelet. In the first few moves, the leopard girl was barely able to resist. After 10 moves, Diana's strength and speed rapidly increased as if there was no end to it. Although it did not reach the leopard girl's maximum speed, it was more than enough to deal with her. The fire god sword felt its master's fighting spirit. The sword's body ignited with raging flames as it slashed and stabbed. Every move was aimed at the leopard girl's vital points. Although the leopard girl had the body of a cheetah, it was not her own memories. In all aspects, she was completely suppressed by Diana. Admit defeat. Diana's speed increased by another level. Borrowing the gap between her body, she slashed at the leopard girl's ribs with her sword and then fiercely slapped the back of her head with her shield. In the leopard girl's dizzy state, the truth lasso was thrown out and tied her up tightly. Chapter 369. In order to prevent the Panther Lady from escaping, Thea froze her limbs again, leaving only her fierce head outside. Unless her neck could be retracted, she wouldn't be able to bite the 2 women 10 meters away. Amanda was very happy to receive Thea's call. She happily said that she would take over personally and said that Thea would be able to see her adult love soon. For Amanda, it should be a good deal to throw out Oliver, a guy with an excessive sense of justice, in exchange for the Panther Lady. Thea thought so. The agents of the Heavenly Eye Society couldn't jump out immediately, so the 2 could only wait. The Panther Lady was still scolding. Thea originally wanted to ask where the god-slaying dagger was, but the other party didn't communicate with her at all. They just insulted her with filthy words. Thea didn't want to touch such an evil weapon, so she left it to Amanda to deal with. After throwing out 15 mental attacks in a row and knocking the Panther Lady unconscious, the surroundings finally quieted down. In such a humid environment, it was inconvenient for the 2 to do something they liked, so they could only chat casually. Just as Sia was telling the story of her childhood surfing with Oliver, she saw a woman dressed in Arabian clothes in front, and a man wearing a black diving suit and a huge, strangely shaped oxygen mask behind her. The 2 of them kept fighting, killing their way from the forest to the open space in front of Sia and the others. Previously, Panther Lady had chosen this place as the battlefield after considering the surrounding environment. This was the only open space in the vicinity. The two strangers naturally made the same choice, but they didn't expect there to be outsiders here. The man wearing the oxygen mask had his entire head wrapped tightly. The mask was oval in shape, and two big red crystals covered where the eyes should be. From afar, he looked like a red-eyed fly. The man's expression couldn't be seen, but Thea, Diana, and the Arabian woman looked at each other and saw the confusion in each other's eyes. The Arabian woman glanced at the frozen panther lady. She didn't know the origin of the two women in front of her, but she still shouted kindly, "Run." The man in the diving suit behind her seemed to treat Thea and Diana as innocent passers-by. Although it was strange to meet living people in the rainforest, he didn't take it to heart at all. He continued to chase the woman without a word. He just raised his arm at Thea and Diana. There seemed to be some kind of launching device on his wrist. Two extremely thin and long metal spikes shot out between the two's eyebrows. In his heart, Thea and Diana were two dead people, not worth his time. But 2 seconds later, he was dumbfounded. For a long time after that, every time he thought of this meeting, he wanted to bang his head against the wall. What was wrong with my hand at that time? Can't I just pretend not to see it? However, he didn't have the ability to foresee the future. Even if he did, he wouldn't be able to foresee that far. The appearance of the two women was too confusing. If Death Knell, who was as big as a mountain, was sitting here, the man in the diving suit might not be so nosy. However, Thea and Diana had changed into casual clothes after the battle. In addition, it was hot and humid here, and they were wearing cooler clothes. They also didn't have any weapons in their hands. No matter how he looked at them, they looked like two harmless vases. Ah! The man in the diving suit ran more than 10 meters away. The screams and the smell of blood that he expected did not appear. He was slower than the Arabian woman, and only then did he see the half-frozen panther lady. Although the panther lady was unconscious, the beastly aura that she exuded was still very eye-catching. "Hey! Are you a black manta? I'll return this to you." Thea and Diana played with the steel needle that he shot out for a while. They didn't know what material it was made of. They only saw that it was very sharp. Thea played with it for a while and felt that it was boring. She threw it back. Although she didn't specially practice darts like the bat family, Thea's long-range attack attribute was almost maxed out. She could play any long-range attack very well, and this steel needle was no exception. The man in the diving suit whose identity was exposed was Sea King Arthur Curry's old enemy, Black Manta. He was a very famous treasure hunter in the underground world. Because Sea King killed his father by mistake, he only had one goal left in life, and that was revenge. Using his years of savings and his excellent mechanical engineering knowledge, Black Manta, an ordinary person without any abilities, created a diving suit and various lethal weapons. He embarked on a lonely path of revenge. In the underground world, he had an outstanding reputation. Usually, he wore a different kind of oxygen mask, and no one had seen his real face. Whether it was on land or in the sea, he usually wore a diving suit with an oxygen mask, so there were many people who knew him. However, at this moment, his identity was exposed by a young and beautiful woman like Thea. He instantly became nervous. Facing the steel needle that was thrown in the opposite direction, he chose to dodge it cautiously. "Your strength and speed are beyond that of ordinary people. Is it because of your combat suit?" Thea gathered magic on her face, as if she was wearing a hazy mask. After the vibration, her voice was completely different from usual. "Esper. Another Esper. Are you also Arthur's companion?" Black Manta's voice had obviously been changed. His voice was a little ethereal, but his tone showed that he was not happy. "Get out of here." Thea didn't want to care about their trivial matters. She just wanted to quickly hand over the leopard girl and then go back to take a good bath. However, she didn't know if her tone was a little unfriendly, or if she had been in a high position all year round, but she naturally had a condescending tone. This made the sensitive Black Manta a little uncomfortable. He misunderstood her meaning. There was a wave of energy on his mask, and 2 orange lasers shot out from his eyes. F***CK. This idiot doesn't know how to listen. What I meant was for you guys to go somewhere else to fight. How did you interpret it that way? Thea was speechless. Diana took out her shield and easily blocked the lasers. It could even block Doomsday's heat rays. This kind of laser made by human black technology was nothing. This is bad. Seeing that his strongest attack didn't work, Black Manta's heart pounded. He finally realized that these two women who were dressed as passers-by were not ordinary people. He wanted to continue chasing the Arabian woman, but how could the warm-hearted Diana let him go? Originally, the two of them were one in front and one behind, so it was difficult to determine who was good and who was evil. Now that Black Manta was so fierce, she didn't hesitate and slashed down with her sword. Black Manta could only take out two long swords and block Diana's Vulcan sword. Clang! A crisp sound entered Thea's ears. She immediately noticed the abnormality. The material of these two long swords was extraordinary. The other party's two swords didn't seem to be made of Earth's existing metal. In the future, Black Manta could use these two swords to fight against the Sea King's divine trident. Now, he could block the Vulcan sword. Considering his profession, it wasn't difficult to analyze that it was most likely a metal found in some underwater ruins. He was intelligent and talented. He would be an outstanding subordinate. However, Thea thought about it and decided to give up. Black Manta was focused on revenge. He didn't care about any price or morals. This was the only meaning of his life. No matter how heaven-defying the hinting technique was, it couldn't change this. Thea could only give up on the idea of recruiting him. Chapter 370. What a waste of such a talent. Thea looked at the Arabian woman who had run 200 meters and realized that her pursuers were not following her. She circled around and came back again. This woman did not know the strength of Thea and Selena, so she took out a scimitar and was ready to help. Thea quickly pulled her back. What a joke! How could an Earthling win against Diana? Black Manta was quite strong and could even be said to be the underwater version of Batman. However, the main premise was that he was prepared, understood the opponent's information, and specially made a bunch of high-tech equipment. This was the secret to his victory. Now, he had no information at all. He wanted to wear a diving suit and defeat Diana, who was wearing a godlike outfit, on land. That was simply a dream. Moreover, Thea did not recognize this Arabian woman at first, but now she finally remembered some things. This woman was one of the first few teammates of the Sea King, Arthur Curry. The six of them formed a team called Alien Tribe. Unfortunately, their team was too weak. 6 espers with 6 divine weapons were defeated by an ordinary person like Black Manta. Thea felt that if she called her subordinates, 6 against 6, it would be easy to wipe them out. Don't worry, my partner is very strong. Thea pulled back the Arabian woman who was about to attack with her scimitar. Black Manta is a famous hunter, Before the Arabian woman could finish her sentence, Diana had an overwhelming advantage. She opened her mouth to say something but could not continue. Diana was far superior to Black Manta in terms of strength, speed, and skills. Her opponent was not a martial arts expert, but an engineer and treasure hunter who was bent on revenge. He was no match for Diana. Lasers, fishing nets, water spikes, all kinds of methods were used. His attacks were effective against the Sea King team, but they were useless against Diana. The only thing worth praising was his diving suit. It was unknown what material it was made of, but Diana saw a flaw in it. She slashed the fire god's sword diagonally, and a huge force acted on the soft diving suit. There was an obvious dent, but the diving suit's toughness and density were extremely good. After a slight dent, it immediately returned to its original state. It actually did not break. Anti-piercing and anti-slashing. Diana put away her shield and feinted with her left foot. When Black Manta dodged to the side, she clenched her right fist and punched him in the stomach. The other party was just an ordinary human. She did not use the power of the silver bracelet. Otherwise, the power of 1,000 tons would have split him in half. The punch landed squarely on the Black Manta Ray's lower abdomen. The special diving suit's texture was indeed excellent, but it was useless in the face of pure strength. Diana's normal attack was not something an ordinary person could withstand. The other party's oxygen mask was airtight. Whether it was diving or fighting underwater, It was a very useful equipment. However, this time, he suffered. A large mouthful of blood rushed to his mouth, but the airtight mask caused the blood to flow back into his trachea, almost causing him to suffocate. He wanted to cough, but he couldn't. He wanted to swallow, but he couldn't. Not daring to continue fighting, he turned around and ran. Come back here. Tell me, what's your motive? Diana pulled the black manta ray back. Following her question, the mantra lasso flashed with light. Collect 3 artifacts of the god of death, find the 7th artifact, rule the land, and kill the Sea King. Black Manta was really shocked. Although he tried his best to resist, the power of the artifact was no joke. Even the gods had to tell the truth in front of the lasso of mantra. He was just a mortal, so he could not control his mouth at all. He told Black Manta everything that he wanted to know. These words did not mean anything to Diana. The Arabian woman did not understand the power of the mantra lasso, so she was skeptical. However, when these words fell into Thea's ears, she could not help but ponder. Thea only knew the story of the Sea King, Arthur Curry. The god of death mentioned by Black Manta was the first king of Atlantis. She vaguely remembered that the 7th artifact was a magic staff. There was no doubt about its power, but if he wanted to rule the land with a magic staff, it was time to wake up. Magic staff. Magic staff. A thought suddenly appeared in Thea's mind. Although it was not impossible to cast spells with a sword, it looked more like a Marushan Taoist than a mage. If she got the magic staff, would it be more beautiful the next time she cast spells? This thing is destined to be with me. Sia nodded silently. Initially, she did not care much about this matter, but now, her attitude had changed. She only remembered that the god of death's relics were left on a small island in the Atlantic Ocean. The Sea King's 6 knew the exact location, but she did not. Your enemy seems to be planning a big conspiracy and needs us. Thea put on the face of a righteous friend and said to the Arabian woman. However, before she could finish, she was interrupted by a flash of golden light. Teleportation? Thea felt that this unknown rainforest was getting more lively. The golden light flashed and a man and 2 women walked out. The man in the lead was bare-chested and wore green pants. He held a golden trident in his hand. Behind him was a red-haired woman in a green tights and a crown. The last to walk out was a woman with brown skin and an anxious expression. Beside her were 2 jaguars. Why is the Sea King here? Although they had never met before, Thea recognized his obvious features. The one with the crown behind him was his wife, Mia. As for the last woman, she was ignored by Thea. If she was not mistaken, she was a member of the Sea King's group of 6. While she was looking at the others, the Sea King and the others were also looking at her. For a moment, everyone was stunned. There were too many people here. Thea had 2 people on her side, the Sea King had 3 people, and the 2 prisoners were the Leopard Lady and Black Manta. The Arabian woman saw her companions and was about to greet them when the Sea King roared and raised his trident. He spat out a lightning bolt as thick as a child's arm at Black Manta. Although she didn't think that Black Manta was a good person, she didn't want others to hurt her own prisoner. Diana raised her eyebrows, clenched her shield in her right hand, and slammed it towards Lightning's direction. The first clash between the 2 divine weapons ended in a draw. Lightning was sent flying and a huge energy beam fell into the rainforest. It destroyed countless trees along the way and disappeared from their sight. Bastard! How dare you stop me? The Sea King's temper was as violent as ever. Diana wanted to argue with him, but seeing how rude he was, she did not waste any more time. She tied Black Manta up tightly with the lasso of truth and raised the guardian silver bracelet on her wrist. A violent energy gushed towards the Sea King from a few meters away. The Sea King did not expect this woman to be able to block his lightning. When he felt the invisible energy from the guardian silver bracelet, he did not dare to be careless. He swung his trident like a windmill. Bam! Bam! The trident was wrapped in a layer of golden light. As the Sea King spun, the golden light resisted with all its might. The Sea King was pushed back 30 meters by the guardian silver bracelet's energy before he stopped. Woman, you. The Sea King calmed down and tried to explain. However, Diana's current goal in life was to eliminate the discrimination between men and women. The Sea King's words did not make her feel comfortable. Instead, it made her even angrier. She did not waste any more time and slashed her sword at him. Chapter 371. Is your innate incompatibility to this extent? Thea was speechless. She only remembered that these two were fighting in the Flashpoint paradox, but this wasn't the Flashpoint. These two were fighting inexplicably. Thea wanted to stop them, but she didn't know where to start. She turned her head and was about to let the Arabian woman speak to persuade them to quickly bring her to get the staff. When she turned her head, she saw the brown woman's two leopards wagging their tails and begging the leopard girl. The leopard girl had woken up at some point, her yellow eyes emitting a terrifying light. The brown woman kept talking to Mia. The Sea King's wife looked a little unhappy, but she still raised her hands and a large amount of water appeared. She wanted to break the ice that trapped the leopard girl. Stop. Thea knew that this was very melodramatic, but she still had to exchange for Amanda's adult favor. She had to stop them from releasing the leopard girl. She didn't have time to wear her armor and instantly shot 3 flame arrows at Mia. Surface person. How dare you attack me? She didn't know if Mia's good relatives came today, but it was as if she was possessed by a brainless unhappiness. Her hands were surrounded by water, and the water was gently stroked by her and turned into dozens of cold arrows, meeting Thea's magic arrows. The 2 arrows met in the air. Thea's magic was more pure, and Mia's was more numerous. The 2 were evenly matched. Ya Wallah, what are you doing? They're not bad people. The Arabian woman hurriedly pulled the brown woman who was about to attack Thea. Cassina, are you okay? But my animal companion said they're bad people. The brown woman, Ya Wallah, also noticed the problem and hurriedly called for her pet. But the pet that could die for her in the past didn't respond to her call. The 2 leopards were trying their best to help the leopard girl escape. Looking at the leopard girl's beast-like vertical pupils, even a simple person would know that there was a problem. The helpless thing was that no matter how the brown woman called, the 2 leopards ignored her. If their claws were broken, they would bite them with their teeth. If their teeth were broken, they would hit them with their heads. The ice on the leopard girl's body gradually cracked. You too, stop the leopard. The woman in the ice has blood on her hands, don't let her come out. If you have more time, try to persuade this woman opposite me. Thea's strength was higher than Malar's, so she still had the time to observe the battlefield. The Sea King's 2 companions had no choice but to pull the 2 jaguars. The Arabian woman had been chased by the black manta ray for dozens of miles and was already exhausted. The brown woman, on the other hand, did not dare to be too harsh on her pet. One of them pulled the leopard's tail while the other pulled its leg. The leopard ignored them and only cared about saving the leopard girl. Idiot. Thea almost spat out a mouthful of blood. On the other side, Malar's eyes were bloodshot. She didn't even listen to Thea's explanation. The icicles, ice arrows, and water arrows didn't stop at all. On the other side, Diana could slightly suppress the Sea King, but she was very determined to protect the black manta ray. She could not break the stalemate in a short time. Help me stall those 2 jaguars. Thea released the moose that was stupidly sleeping in the ring and ordered in a low voice. The moose immediately felt the god of the cheetah in the leopard girl's body, especially when the other party stole the divine power of the moon goddess. This made the moose even more dissatisfied, but it still faithfully carried out Thea's order. As long as the 2 jaguars came close, it would use its antlers to push them back. Does this friend of yours understand English? Who can persuade her? Thea dealt with Malar's fierce attacks and was speechless. This couple was really a pair, they were really messing around. The Sea King's 2 companions hurriedly shouted, trying to stop Malar. However, the Queen of Atlantis acted as if she didn't hear them and continued to attack Thea fiercely. Needless to say, this must be the doing of the god of the cheetah in the leopard girl's body. The other party's methods were not brilliant, but it was triggered by Malar's bad temper. It was not without reason that Malar would be chosen by the angry Red Ring in the future. However, temper and strength were not the same. Even if she performed above her level, she was still inevitably suppressed by Thea. Her ability to control water came from her bloodline. It was definitely very powerful underwater, but on land, it was only a few things. Thea's single water attribute was not as good as her, but Thea's methods were extremely rich. Fireballs offset her ice arrows, wind blades, light spears, shadow arrows, and a large number of control and weakening spells, and threw them out. I'll pull her away, you guys go and persuade the guy with the fork. Thea was afraid that the battle between the two would break the ice on the leopard girl's body, so she took out the light ring and put it on. Dense chains appeared and bound Malar and flew into the distance. After running out of a certain range, the mind control effect would disappear, and the other party would wake up. Thea calculated well, but she flew a little too fast, and the two women on the ground were one step slower. She did not take the Sea King into account. You dare to hurt my wife. The Sea King saw Thea running away with Malar tied up, and immediately became anxious. Risking being hit by Diana's sword, the trident in his hand gathered a large amount of lightning, and a wash-basin-sized lightning ball was thrown at Thea. Do you think you're the only one who can use lightning? This stupid couple really made Thea a little angry. She took out the magical longbow, narked Zeus's lightning arrow, and shot an arrow at the lightning ball below. The lightning ball from the Sea King's trident was white, like a storm brewing in the sea. Thea's lightning arrow was dark blue, as peaceful as the sky, but in this tranquility, there was a fatal danger. Two divine weapons that could emit the power of lightning welcomed the first collision since the day they were created. One was like a roar from the sea, the other was like a divine punishment from the sky. The divine weapon of Atlantis represented the last glory of the lost civilization, firm, tenacious, and unquestionable. Thea's Zeus arrow was also mixed with the god's supreme, great, and invincible spirit. The two different colored lightning finally met, and time seemed to freeze. The first second was calm, as if the previous fierce scene did not exist, but in the next second, the two balls of energy finally exploded violently. Boom! The two balls of energy disappeared, and the sound of the explosion seemed to pierce through the air. The huge energy spread in all directions, and the two women who were about to explain could only lie down on the ground to avoid the shock wave that swept across the rainforest in a radius of 10 miles. This round of collision seemed to be evenly matched, but the Sea King was injured by Diana, and the trident's charging time was too short, so it did not fully exert the power of the divine weapon. Thea was even more hurried to fight. Her lightning magic needed to be mixed with fire, wind, and water elements. The power she shot out was only the power of the arrow, and it was far from her maximum damage limit. Both of them were very unhappy, and at the same time, they gathered energy and prepared for the next round of attack. Although Malar was confused, she still recognized the Sea King. She broke free from the chains and wanted to fight Thea together. Diana naturally could not just stand by and watch, so she stopped Malar. The four of them exchanged opponents, and prepared to fight the second round in confusion. Chapter 372. Diana often sparred with Thea, so she had ample experience in dealing with elemental energy. Mia's ability to control water was only slightly troublesome to her, but not fatal. She blocked the ice arrows and water arrows with her shield and slashed continuously with the Vulcan sword in her hand. Mia could only mobilize a large amount of water elements to form a shield to block the attacks. On the other hand, Thea's battle with the Sea King was not as gentle as theirs. The thunder element had always been unruly and was known to shake the 9 heavens. Energy exploded, and the sound and light effects were dazzling. The battle between the two had reached its climax right from the start. The Sea King was beaten silly by the two women, and had long forgotten what he wanted to do. Thea, on the other hand, wanted to see how powerful the Sea King's trident was. The lightning arrows in her hand did not stop, and she shot them one after another. Sometimes, she even condensed her own magic into the lightning arrows to launch a surprise attack on the Sea King. Come down if you dare. The Sea King was in a passive position. He was almost invincible in the water, but his strength on land was reduced by a lot. Most importantly, he could not fly. After being hit by Thea for a long time, the Sea King, who was already angry, could no longer suppress his violent temper. Thea, who was hovering in mid-air, did not just shoot arrows. She also threw a few weakening spells from time to time. However, it was unknown whether it was because of the trident in his hand or because of his Atlantean bloodline, but the Sea King's magic resistance was surprisingly high. Among the people that Thea had met, only Diana had a higher magic resistance than him. She could resist 9 out of 10 spells, and the remaining spell could only last for a short time. Fear. Simple spells could not take him down, so Thea could only mix emotional energy into her spells. With the help of spells, the power of the lamp was continuously channeled into the Sea King's heart. This time, he could not resist. The death of his father, the supercilious looks of the people around him, the betrayal of his companions, and all kinds of tragic scenes surrounded his mind. Arthur. Seeing that her husband was in danger, Malar finally broke free from the control of the cheetah god. Her eyes regained their clarity, she raised her arm and took Diana's sword head-on with her wrist guard. Then, she flew up and created a large amount of ice to protect her husband. She completely ignored her own safety and looked at Thea and Diana vigilantly. Since it was a misunderstanding, Thea naturally did not continue to attack. She turned to look at the captive. What she saw infuriated her. Previously, the Black Manta had been tied up by Diana's lasso, but as the battle escalated, Diana had left him in the custody of the Sea King's 2 companions. The Black Manta had taken advantage of their unpreparedness and launched a sudden attack, injuring the Arabian woman. He then snatched the bag from her back and ran into the depths of the forest. The brown woman had to take care of her injured companion and hold back her 2 jaguar pets. Her brain, which was not smart to begin with, was completely muddled. Thea originally wanted to chase after the Black Manta, but the Panther Lady had already escaped. Although there was still a lot of ice on her body, she could barely run. How dare you run? Thea took out a lightning arrow and shot it. At the same time, she called for Diana to chase after her. The Sea King and Malar, who realized that they had made a mistake, saw that their companion was not in mortal danger and also helped to block them. Although the Panther Lady was powerful, her previous injuries were not light. She could not beat any of the 4 people now. In less than 3 kilometers, she was surrounded, beaten up, and captured again. This time, they did not dare to let their guard down. Perhaps the Panther Lady was not a threat, but the cheetah god in her body was indeed troublesome. Especially the other party's method of silently bewitching people's minds, it made them a little annoyed. Fortunately, there was still science to solve things that magic could not solve. Thea asked the elk to go back to sleep. Then, she picked out a few pieces of metal from the space ring. These pieces of metal were specially made by Batman to prevent the mind control of the Martian hunter. The composition was unknown, and the origin was unknown. It was a proper black technology product. Damien took it from his father in order to study the relationship between science and magic. Thea modified it into a headband on the spot and put it on the Panther Lady's head. From afar, it looked like the hoop spell, but the other party's mental fluctuations could not be omitted. After tying up the Panther Lady tightly, Thea got up and greeted them. The brown woman, J.A. Waller, apologized to Thea first. Her jaguar was the first to be bewitched. The 2 leopards were very pitiful now that they were out of control. They also lowered their heads cooperatively and whimpered, begging for forgiveness. Thea now had a special love for animals. She had come into contact with a lot of elk, gorilla, shark, and unicorn. She touched the big heads of the 2 leopards and felt that they were very nice. She wondered if she should ask J.A. Waller later if there were any little leopards so that she could take one back and play with it. The 2 leopards' claws were broken, their teeth were missing, and their bodies were dirty. Thea threw out 2 cleansing spells, and their bodies were recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. The Arabian woman, Cassina, next to her, covered her shoulder that had been pierced by the Black Manta ray. She looked very pitiful. Thea thought about it and also threw a healing spell at her. The 2 sides exchanged their names. Thea said her real name. She thought that she would receive some exclamations like "so it's you," and other exclamations, but these people's reactions surprised her. They were either hermits, savages, or simply Atlanteans. They had never heard of Thea's name. The slightly depressed Thea ran to the side to tease the 2 leopards. The 2 leopards were healed by her and their intimacy with her greatly improved. If it were not for their deeper ties with J.A. Waller, they would most likely have gone back to Star City with her. The rest of the people were not in the mood. The Arabian woman told them that she had been chased by the Black Manta Ray all the way. She was quite happy that her nemesis was captured by 2 passers-by. She did not expect that after a melodramatic battle, the duck in her hand flew away. Not only did the duck fly away, but it also injured her and stole one of the god of death's divine weapons, the golden seal. This lady's divine weapon. The Arabian woman pointed at Diana. The Black Manta Ray told the truth. He wanted to get 3 divine weapons, activate the mark of the tomb, and find the 7th divine weapon of the god of death. The Arabian woman, Cassina, told them everything she knew. I want to gather my companions and deal with the Black Manta Ray together, the Sea King declared enthusiastically. Mia looked at him lovingly. Thea pursed her lips. You have a few mutants with a bunch of divine weapons. You want to besiege an ordinary person, but you're shouting so righteously. Do you have any shame? Do you need our help? Thea did not say anything. Diana, who had a strong sense of justice, spoke up. We don't need your help, Greek. Mia looked at Diana cautiously. Her husband had too many women around him. Cassina and J.A. Waller claimed that they were her husband's companions, but she had never heard him mention them. Mia, who was blindly in love, was like a female beast, watching every woman who approached her husband. Chapter 373. Thea was unhappy when she heard the hostility in her tone. Greek. The Greeks used to fight alongside the Atlanteans. You're not looking down on your former allies, are you? Besides, I don't think you're an Atlantean. You're from Zebel, right? You're an exile from Atlantis. Huh? The Sea King was confused. He turned to look at his wife. Malar avoided the Sea King's gaze with a hint of panic in her eyes. Thea continued, King of Death. Is that what you call him? Don't you know that his real name is Atlan? He's the creator of Atlantis, the first king. To think that you descendants would call him the King of Death. That's ridiculous. Diana also assisted. I know Atlan. Mother mentioned him in her books. He was a great king. His achievements were comparable to the sages in the history of human heroes. The Sea King Arthur Curry was speechless. Half a year ago, he was still guarding the lighthouse in Maine. How would he know about these secrets from tens of thousands of years ago? When others called him the King of Death, he just followed suit. Now, he realized that something was wrong. It sounded like an ancestor. Atlan is the King of Death that you speak of. He built Atlantis on land. It was a civilization before Earth civilization. The King of Atlan was broad-minded. He abandoned his prejudices and accepted all races. As long as they agreed with his ideals, he would see them as part of Atlantis. Thea began to teach them. Of course, these things were brought from her memory. Diana knew that she had read countless books and was not surprised. The Sea King and his wife listened with great interest. It had always been the Sea King's goal to promote harmony between the people on the surface and underwater. Now that he heard that his ancient ancestors had done the same, a strong sense of recognition surged in his heart. Unexpectedly, Thea took a 180-degree turn. What she said next gave him a heavy blow. The King of Death's inclusive policy caused strong dissatisfaction among the conservatives. His younger brother launched a coup and took away the Sea King's trident that symbolized authority. The founder of the kingdom was expelled from his home by his family. You mean? The Sea King raised the trident in his hand, his face full of disbelief. My ancestors were traitors. Thea shook her head slightly. Traitor or not, the truth has long been lost to history. But I only know that the 7th divine artifact that you were discussing just now is not correct. He pointed at the trident in the Sea King's hand. This trident was forged by the god of death in his early days. After he was exiled from his country, he forged 6 new divine weapons. You have 5 of them, and the remaining one. What about the last one? The few of them hurriedly asked. Even the 2 jaguars lying on the ground, unable to understand human language, pricked up their ears to listen. Thea was a little hesitant. According to the records, The god of death created a staff in the end. The power of this staff was almost infinite in his hands. He sank the entire continent of Atlantis with one blow. I think it's a bit of a boast. Divine weapons are not that powerful. Diana explained calmly. Thea did not say anything. Either the full power of the staff could only be unleashed in the hands of the god of death, or he found some magic node, like the Purgatory Island where Oliver stayed for years. Otherwise, sinking the continent with one blow was too powerful. We can help you fight against the black manta rays, but the god of death staff is too dangerous. We can't leave it in the hands of the Atlanteans. Thea finally revealed her purpose, and then threw a big bomb at them. The god of death disappeared after sinking Atlantis. Many people thought that he had crossed the boundary between life and death and was still sleeping somewhere. The human scholars, the Greek gods, and your records all called him the god of death for this reason. The few of them were not fools. They roughly understood Thea's meaning. If they kept it in their hands, they would only be able to fight the god of death. If they gave it to Thea, they would have someone to share the hatred. Maybe the god of death would come back to life and attack the continent directly. Malar thought this was a good idea. She winked at the Sea King and asked him to agree. The people on the continent. The Sea King was still a little hesitant. Should the god of death bomb explode on the continent or on the Atlanteans? He can't unleash his full power without the divine weapon. There are so many people on the continent. As long as he appears, he will be discovered. Thea felt that the old zombie would not be able to withstand 2 punches from Superman. Taking his equipment would not be a problem at all. Well, as the king of Atlantis, I agree to your request. The god of death staff will be kept on the surface. The Sea King did not care about the divine weapon. The 5 divine weapons that he found that day were distributed to his friends. He did not want the flashy armor that was originally given to him when he inherited the throne. He only wore a belt that symbolized his royal power and took a trident. The 2 sides happily finalized the details. J.A. Vara, who had the teleportation pearl, went to pick up their remaining friends. The few of them gathered quickly. They were the war prisoner who wore the god of death's golden shackles and could cast a protective field. The detective who held a golden key that could open any lock. The last to arrive was Vostok. He wore a golden helmet on his head that had no water, no air, and did not need to eat or drink. Vostok was an astronaut who grew up in a claustrophobic environment. Malar saw that her husband's other 3 companions were all men and heaved a sigh of relief. Before they could officially discuss it, Amanda arrived. So many people. Detective. Why are you here? When did you send me the document I asked you to look for last time? When Amanda got off the plane, she immediately saw the detective, who was wearing high-tech equipment and didn't expose a single bit of his skin. She then looked at the war prisoner. Soldier, which unit are you from? I think I've seen your number before. Thea quickly pulled her aside. Amanda was almost obsessed with rebuilding her suicide squad. She did not need the Panther Girl for obvious reasons. However, Thea had to warn her that the Panther Girl's strength was not something that could be easily manipulated by the likes of the Clown Girl. On the other side, the Sea King also called the detective to the side and asked what Amanda did. The great detective maintained close contact with many organizations all over the world. As for the famous Amanda, he naturally had many dealings with her. He was a little puzzled as to how the Sea King had gotten involved with Amanda, but he didn't hide anything from his good friend and told him everything he knew. A member of the government, the Heaven's Eye Society. Although the Sea King had lived on the ground for many years, he had always been uninformed. He did not know anything about the higher-ups. How do you know that young woman? The detective used his chin to point at Thea, who was talking to Amanda. The Sea King could only tell him about the muddled fight between the 2 groups of people. Chapter 374. After the Sea King finished speaking, he noticed that the detective was deep in thought. Why, is she famous among the humans? I don't have any impression of her. The detective glanced at him. He was speechless at his friend's dullness. Thea had already taken off her mask. How could the detective, who had been active in intelligence gathering, not recognize her? She's a super-rich person. I've collected a lot of information about her. If you didn't mention it, I wouldn't have thought that she's a superpower user. How's her combat power? The Sea King was embarrassed when he heard this question. He was facing the fear shock head-on. If Malar hadn't used a large ice wall to keep him awake, he would have been talking nonsense. Now, in front of his old friend, he couldn't say that he was almost beaten to the ground and called for his father. He could only say vaguely, about the same as me. The detective couldn't help but size him up. The Sea King was flustered by his stare, so he changed the topic. Arthur, if you want the people on the surface and underwater to live in harmony, she can provide you with some help. In recent years, she's been making a lot of big moves. The government and the military are behind all of them. The Sea King nodded. It was still too early to say anything. Both the people on the surface and underwater were not ready to accept each other. He still needed to observe before he could make a decision. Not far away, Thea and Amanda had also completed the handover. A few fully armed soldiers carried the Panther Girl, who was tied up like a dumpling, onto the plane. Whatever happened after that would have nothing to do with Thea. If they wanted to ask her for help again, they would have to pay a new price. After Amanda left, the Sea King gave everyone a brief introduction. Next, they would study how to deal with the black manta rays. It's too wet here. Can we talk on my plane? I don't feel safe walking on the ground. The detective interrupted the Sea King. Everyone looked around. The originally deserted tropical rainforest was now a mess after Thea and the Sea King's lightning clash. Ditches were everywhere, and many trees were smoking. A large number of birds and insects were leaving the area in groups. No matter how one looked at it, it was a very messy place. Their small team's meeting place had always been the detective's plane, which was called the living room. Ya Vala used her divine artifact, the golden ball, to open a long-distance channel and teleported them to the plane 10,000 meters above the ground. This was Thea's first time using someone else's teleportation door. She could only say that it was indeed a divine artifact. It was convenient, fast, stable and efficient. As long as she remembered a certain location, she could teleport there regardless of the distance. The only regret was that this thing could be used by anyone. After all, Thea and Diana were outsiders and did not participate in their discussion. Miraculously, their small team had subconsciously excluded Mia, the Sea King's wife. The Sea King was muddle-headed and did not realize that something was wrong. At this moment, Malar's grievance was indescribable. Originally, she and the Sea King were living a good life in the lighthouse at Cien Port. Suddenly, Ya Walla teleported over and said that Cassina was in danger. Her husband hurriedly brought her here to save him. In all honesty, Malar did not know any Ya Walla or Cassina at all. Then, she was bewitched by the cheetah god and fought with Thea and Diana for a long time. In the end, she ran to this plane to discuss countermeasures. God had mercy on her, she did not even know who the enemy was. In her own tribe, Malar was the symbol of royalty because of her ability to control water. In Atlantis, she was also trained to be the queen. Now that she was being ostracized by the Sea King's small team, she was very sad. However, she could not show it on her face and could only stand outside and watch them discuss. After listening for a while, Thea understood why they could not defeat the black manta rays. Cassina was known as a prophet, but in fact, her ability was very limited. She was similar to Lisa Dracker, who worked under Sinisto. She could only predict what would happen in the next few seconds. Ya Walla was a wild child who grew up in the jungle. The fact that she could stutter and speak English was a sign of her talent. Asking her to come up with ideas was just a dream. Prisoner of War was always surrounded by the souls of his comrades and was immersed in his own inner world for 59 out of 60 minutes. On the other hand, Vostok was severely autistic. He would rather wear a helmet that did not allow him to eat and hide for 2 years than speak a word to others. In their team, the only two who could come up with ideas were the detective and the Sea King. However, the detective was an old man in his 70s and was very conservative. He suggested to the Sea King that they should split up again and lure the black manta rays to steal the 3 divine artifacts. Then, they would set up an ambush. The Sea King naturally would not let his companions take the risk. His idea was to find the other party and fight directly. The detective would never agree to it, and the two argued for half an hour. In the end, the Sea King was prepared to jump off the plane alone to chase after the black manta rays. Thea quickly stopped him. The black manta rays were just ordinary people. It was not a big deal. It was as if they were disbanding. Arthur, my satellite has found traces of the black manta rays. He is buying some equipment in a black market in Germany. In fact, the satellite was just a lie. It was a report from Death Knell's eyes and ears in the black market all over the world. Let's wait until there is no one around and take him down. Thea generally supported the Sea King's idea. According to the old detective, it was not necessary to go through so much trouble just for a surprise attack. Now, with Thea, Diana, Mira and their small team, there were 9 of them. More than 10 divine artifacts could not take down the black manta rays. Thea did not believe it. The Sea King received unexpected support and gave the old detective a provocative look. The old man was very well-mannered and was not in the mood to care about the young man's smugness. He asked for the coordinates that Thea had mentioned and piloted the plane to fly straight to Germany. Thea transferred 2 more satellites to Europe and the signal was directly transmitted to the old detective's plane. It was not difficult to find the black manta ray's unique diving helmet using facial recognition. The black manta ray's figure soon appeared on the plane's display screen. How do we go down to catch him? The few of them scratched their heads. Thea asked carefully and found out that J.A. Valor's teleportation divine artifact could only be used by people who had been to places or people who were very familiar with them. She had only met the black manta once and was far from being familiar with him. We still have to do it. Thea was delighted. Put on your equipment. I can teleport you all over. You can teleport too. With the help of the 2 Jaguars as a bridge, J.A. Valor was the closest to Thea in the Sea King's team. This girl who grew up in the jungle asked in disbelief. What did she mean by I can teleport too? Thea pursed her lips. That was the function of the divine artifact. This was my own knowledge. It was not the same thing. She nodded casually, indicating that she could teleport too. She opened the Eye of Horus and observed the black manta rays 10,000 meters below, looking for the best opportunity to attack. Chapter 375. It could be seen that Black Manta's body had not fully recovered. He was still a little wobbly when he walked. Although Diana did not use her full strength in that punch, and most of the impact of the punch was absorbed by his waterproof suit, the remaining force was not something an ordinary person like him could handle. He had escaped from the rainforest with his life on the line, and his injuries had worsened. He had injected some recovery potions, but the effects were not great. Thea looked around carefully. The enemy seemed to be defenseless, but under Horus' gaze, there were many people in diving suits around them. If she was not mistaken, they should be Black Manta's subordinates. He might have sensed that the Sea King and his party had a teleportation artifact, so he was vigilantly setting up an ambush around them. As the Sea King's archenemy, Black Manta knew his enemy very well. If it were not for Thea and Diana, the Sea King would have rushed into his encirclement. Everyone. Thea spoke to attract their attention. The enemy has set up an ambush around us. Their ambush is like this. Thea used her magic to draw a sketch in the air, marking out the few hidden enemies. Other than Black Manta, there are a total of 15 enemies. 8 in the east will belong to the 2 of us, and 7 in the west will belong to the 5 of you. Arthur, you and your wife, go and capture Black Manta. Prepare your equipment. I will open the teleportation door in a minute. Remember, go through it as fast as you can. Don't hesitate. Sia was really tired of their brainless fighting style. Just like how she instructed her subordinates in her own company, she assigned the specific tasks to each of them. The few of them had no objections to the mission, and the Sea King also felt that it was appropriate for the couple to deal with their old enemies. The old detective was a little dissatisfied, but he forced himself to endure it when he considered her identity. Let's go. Seeing that they were ready, Thea opened a dark blue teleportation door as fast as she could, and stepped in first. The others followed closely behind, and walked out in a single file. Attack. The enemy is here. Black Manta Ray suddenly saw a dark blue portal not far away. He immediately knew that something was wrong and gave the order at the same time as Thea, who had stepped out of the portal. Thea's divine longbow was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, she shot down 4 men in diving suits. Diana's long-range attacks were slightly slower than hers. She used her lassos to trap 2 men. The other 2 jumped over and knocked them down with a punch. On the other side, the Sea King's 5 companions had also defeated 7 ambushers. Everyone looked at the Sea King who was fighting. "Don't interfere. This is between me and him." Sea King Arthur Curry even stopped Mia from helping. He was determined to defeat Black Manta with his own hands. Black Manta also realized that this was his last chance for revenge. His 2 long swords danced like windmills. He no longer thought about escaping or treating his injuries. All he wanted was to kill Arthur Curry. Even though the Sea King's physique was superior to Black Manta's in all aspects, Black Manta's technological equipment was specially prepared to deal with the Sea King. The 2 of them were evenly matched. The lightning from the Sea King's trident was offset by the laser from Black Manta's oxygen mask. The 2 of them fought as if their lives depended on it. The Sea King's tactic was to exchange injury for injury. However, his huge strength did not cause much damage to Black Manta's diving suit. Instead, the Sea King, who was not wearing a shirt, was slashed twice. Blood gushed out and flowed down his pants to the ground. "Do we need to help?" Diana asked. Thea shook her head. The Sea King and Black Manta had a grudge against each other. This was their own problem. It was not appropriate for outsiders to interfere. Black Manta was greedy. He went to steal the Sea King's blood and accidentally injured the Sea King's father. The Sea King naturally went to seek revenge. However, after he killed Black Manta's father by mistake, he found out that his father was only injured at that time and died of a heart attack. The target of Black Manta's revenge was instantly reversed. In his grief and anger, Black Manta used up all his wealth and challenged the Master of the 7 Seas as an ordinary human. His actions were not to be judged, but his courage was worthy of praise. Thea saw courage in him that was not inferior to the Green Lantern's. It was totally possible for a few people to besiege the Leopard Lady because she was possessed by an evil god. However, if a group of people besieged Black Manta, Thea felt that she had become the villain. It was better to let him and the Sea King fight slowly. The Black Manta Ray gave it his all and found an opening. He used a huge fishing net to trap the Sea King and stabbed him with 2 sharp blades. The fishing net was made of an unknown material. The more the Sea King struggled, the tighter it became. The tall Sea King was trapped in a ball. The trident in his hand was a long weapon and could not be swung. He could only give up the trident and tear the fishing net with both hands. Fut! Black Manta was waiting for this opportunity. He stabbed him with 2 long blades. Unfortunately, no matter how good his calculations were, he was just an ordinary human. The Sea King was a hybrid of human and Atlantean. His natural strength, agility, and reaction speed were all above that of humans. Facing the 2 deadly long blades, the Sea King tilted his body slightly. One of the blades stabbed into his left shoulder and the other into his arm. His muscles tightened as he clamped Black Manta's long blade. He used his free hand to clench his fist and hit Black Manta's oxygen mask with all his might. 1 punch, 2 punches, 3 punches. Black Manta also realized his mistake. He wanted to let go of his blade and distance himself again. However, the Sea King changed from hitting to grabbing. He grabbed the air supply pipe at the edge of his oxygen mask and used his head as a hammer to hit Black Manta's oxygen mask. This fight is too ugly. Sia had the urge to cover her face. The Sea King seemed very brave in the battle, but if one were to compare the physical attributes of both sides, one would realize that he was completely relying on his own high attributes and high recovery speed to bully his opponent. Diana, who admired the classical beauty of Greece, also turned her face away. Using brute force to defeat an opponent who was obviously weaker than himself was not the glory of a warrior. Mela did not care. In fact, she was happy with whatever her husband did. The Sea King's friends were also excited. They were just short of clapping their hands to cheer him on. Black Manta was knocked out of his senses. The laser on his oxygen mask fired continuously, hitting the Sea King's face and chest until it was a bloody mess. The Sea King ignored these injuries as if he had gone berserk. He kicked Black Manta to the ground and learned the tactic that Batman used against Bane. Pull out the tube. He grabbed the tube on Black Manta's oxygen mask and pulled it out. With a crack, one of the oxygen tubes was forcefully pulled out. A large part of the oxygen mask was also torn apart. An African man's face was revealed. The laser on Black Manta's oxygen mask was completely useless. However, he still had a lot of equipment on him. The two of them fought hand-to-hand. Each of the Sea King's punches caused great damage to him. However, Black Manta was also ruthless. He used all kinds of weapons on the Sea King. Water spikes, brass knuckles, stun guns, ropes with sharp blades. Black Manta used whatever he could grab. In the end, he even stuffed a mini mine into the Sea King's wound. Chapter 376. Boom. The continuous attacks made Black Manta a little dizzy. There was a mistake in the estimation of the detonation time of the mine. Just as it got close to the Sea King's skin, it exploded on his own hand. Both of them suffered a violent impact. Although Black Manta's left hand was cushioned by the diving suit, it was still seriously injured by the explosion. Not to mention the shirtless Sea King, he took half of the explosion. The original 5-centimeter wound was blown into a big hole, vaguely showing signs of internal organs. Don't come over. The Sea King, who was stunned by the explosion, quickly stopped them when he saw that they were about to attack. The enemy was only left with a sliver of health. He could not let them take advantage of him. He staggered to Black Manta's side and raised his huge fist. When he realized that his opponent's diving suit had excellent defense, he attacked his opponent's half-exposed head. Do you admit defeat? How dare you chase after my companion? How dare you offend the dignity of Atlantis? After all, Black Manta was just an ordinary person. He could not take 2 punches and fainted in a daze. Although the Sea King's recovery was strong, he was still in a trance. He was relying on the unyielding belief in his mind to support himself as he punched again and again. Arthur, he has lost consciousness. You are the winner. Mayla looked at her husband like a crazy fan, her eyes full of love. I won. Yes, I won. The Sea King, Arthur Curry, stood up with his tall body and raised his right fist. He was enjoying this hard-won victory. Thea saw this scene and clenched her teeth. The Sea King was now covered in wounds. There was a long sword in each of his shoulders and arms. There were also many steel needles, daggers, and other sharp weapons on his body. There was a big hole in his stomach and a rope full of barbs was wrapped around his neck. The left side of his face was burned by Black Manta's laser. Those who knew would say that Black Manta had many tricks up his sleeves to counter the Sea King. Those who did not know would think that he had gone to play the role of Whitebeard in the war. You beat up an ordinary person who has not received any combat training? You still have the guts to raise your arms and cheer. For the sake of the Death King's staff, in order to maintain a friendly relationship with Atlantis, Thea turned her face away and resisted the urge to complain. The fight was too fierce. Thea waited for a while before the Sea King stopped waving his arms and shouting in a particularly silly manner. Thea guessed that he was most likely too heavily injured to continue shouting. Thea raised her hand and cast a healing spell on him. Although his recovery ability would greatly increase once he entered the sea, Thea was afraid that he would die before he could reach the seaside. Based on the principle of fairness, he also cast a healing spell on the Black Manta on the ground. He did not have the Sea King's regenerative abilities, and his face was deformed as if he had been run over by a train. Without external healing, it would take at least a year or so for him to recover. Black Manta was securely tied up, and his men were of no consequence. The few of them did not have time to discuss. J.A. Valor opened her divine artifact teleportation door and teleported everyone to the beach. Because the Sea King Arthur Curry was bleeding non-stop, his recovery speed was not as fast as the bleeding speed, and he was so weak that he could not speak. After being teleported to the North Sea, Mia gently controlled the water and swept her husband into the sea. The few of them waited for less than half an hour before they saw the lively Sea King reappear in their sight. This guy's regenerative ability in the sea was really fast. Thea could not help but think that if they fought this guy, they would have to leave the water source. Otherwise, his regenerative ability was almost on par with the Kryptonians, and no one could beat him in the water. Arthur, do you want me to hand this guy over to the Heaven's Eye Society or do you want to take him away? Thea saw that the Sea King had almost recovered and asked. This. The Sea King, who had recovered from his injuries, regained his composure. Looking at Black Manta, who was beaten up badly by him, he felt a little guilty. He had killed his father and beaten him up. It seemed too cruel to hand him over to the Heavenly Eye Society now. He deliberated over his words. He has killed many Atlanteans. I want him to be brought back to face trial. Thea nodded and acquiesced to this solution. The Black Manta was almost harmless to the land. If the Sea King wanted to save his life, he would only be asking for trouble. However, that had nothing to do with Thea. The Sea King wanted to bring the Black Manta back to Atlantis. He did not arrange for a tour. Now that she had the water attribute, Thea, who did not like to go into the water, naturally did not mention it. She remembered that the Sea King's family was still in a mess, and she was not interested in getting involved. A white light flashed on the trident. Even without an oxygen mask, the Black Manta could be dragged into the sea. Everyone watched as they swam into the deep sea. Thea and the rest returned to the plane and rushed to Death King's Island. When they arrived at the Atlantic Ocean, it was already night time. A thin layer of fog rose from the surface of the sea, and the waves rose and fell gently. Occasionally, there would be a few scattered islands. If they were here for sightseeing, the environment would be very beautiful. Unfortunately, it was not the Death King's Island that they were looking for. Thea, Diana, and Mira had not been here before. The task of finding the way was naturally left to the Sea King's friends. However, these people were either autistic, mentally ill, or had never learned geography. They did not refuse at all. The task of finding the way automatically fell to the old detective. At first, the old man patted his chest and said that there was no problem. However, after wandering around the Atlantic Ocean for an hour, his tone was not so sure. In this hour, the old man patted his chest more than 10 times. However, his words became less and less confident. At first, he said, "It's around here." Now, he said, "It's probably around here." In desperation, they could only land on an island. Mira used her special communication method to call the Sea King. They waited in boredom. Midway, Diana sparred with the few of them. Thea and Ya Walla went back to her jungle and hugged a 1-month-old jaguar. They were going to bring it back to Star City to play with. In the Sea King's small team, Thea had the best relationship with this girl who grew up in the jungle. Ya Walla was very simple. She stubbornly believed that people who were good to animals were good people. In addition, she saw the relationship between Thea and Diana. She was even more envious because she had a crush on the Arabian girl, Cassina. It was just that she did not dare to say it out loud. After waiting for an entire night, they finally saw the Sea King's exhausted figure when the sun was about to rise. There were no scars or signs of a fight, which could only mean that his trip home this time was not pleasant. The few of them did not say much and silently followed him. Based on their previous experience on the island, Thea judged that there was a very strange magic on the island. It was very similar to Paradise Island. It was impossible to find it with the naked eye. However, the Sea King's trident could automatically guide the way. They did not take a plane again. The Sea King summoned a few docile dolphins for them to ride. Chapter 377. Thea was a little impatient after sitting for a while. She changed into her water armor. She did not show her fastest speed when she was carrying Fiora last time. She wanted to test how fast she was underwater. "I didn't expect you to swim so fast." Mia, the Sea King, who also did not ride a dolphin but relied on her own ability to swim, was shocked by Thea's sudden burst of speed. Although it was far from the trident-wielding Sea King, it was very close to Mia's speed. "I'll compete with you in swimming." Mia did not have a smooth day. She could not see the feelings between human women. She felt that her husband was an indomitable spirit. The Arabian woman Cassina, the brown-skinned wild child Ya Walla, Thea, and Diana were all threats to her position. Among them, the unusually active Thea was the biggest threat. She could not win on land, but she did not think she would lose in the sea. Thea did not think so much. There was no need to set the rules or ask for a judge. Both of them were ready to swim forward at the same time. She relied on the armor to provide power. Mia also had almost unlimited physical strength in the sea. Both of them shot out at the same time like an arrow released from a bow. Mia quickly took the lead with her skillful movements. Thea instructed Gideon to scan her movements, the angle of entry, and the frequency of her body swaying. After that, the simulation was optimized and applied to the armor. Mia's speed quickly caught up. "You learned so fast." Mia did not know about the existence of artificial intelligence. She saw Thea's familiar movements, which were very obviously mimicking her swimming posture. She thought that Thea had learned it after seeing it once. She was shocked. This mainlander's learning ability was too scary. Although she was shocked, she was still far from being convinced. Mia mobilized a large amount of seawater to give herself a push. Her speed increased by 30%. So it could be played like this. Thea felt that she had learned another trick. This time, she did not use Gideon. Although she did not use it usually, she still had the water attribute. She imitated Mia and gathered a large amount of water magic behind her to push herself forward. 1,500 nautical miles, 1,600 nautical miles, 1,650 nautical miles. The propulsion effect was immediate. Gideon truthfully reported her speed, which finally stopped at nearly 1,700 nautical miles per hour. Malar sensed that she was catching up to her again and could only increase her speed as fast as she could. Thea followed behind her unhurriedly. When they reached the Death King's Island and everyone came ashore, Thea was still in high spirits. Malar was so tired that her face was pale. She soaked in the sea alone for a long time before she could catch her breath. "You fought with her again?" Diana asked Thea softly as she looked at Malar's pale face. "No, I was just following behind her. From the beginning to the end, I didn't surpass her. I have to say that she swam really fast." Thea acted as if nothing had happened. She did not use any energy at all. She was using the armor's energy source. She was also puzzled. Thea did not know that it was this from the beginning to the end that forced Malar to use the fastest speed in her life. The Sea King also did not understand why his wife was swimming so hard. He asked about her well-being and Malar's legs were trembling. However, she pretended as if nothing had happened and pulled the Sea King to show off their affection. Unfortunately, other than her, there were 4 women present who had indescribable relationships with each other. As for the remaining 3 men, one was severely autistic while the other was half crazy because of being haunted by ghosts. The only normal one was the old detective. However, the old man was 70 years old and his grandson was 20 years old. He could not understand Malar's good intentions. Malar spread a bunch of dog food on the spot and found that the onlookers were stable and did not have any excessive reactions. She felt that she had punched empty air and followed the others to the island. The island was not big. If they did not walk close to it, even the Eye of Horus would not be able to discover the island. The plants on the island were very sparse. There was a mountain that was not too tall in sight. From time to time, dark red magma would flow out. The entire island was shrouded in a layer of invisible black smoke due to the high temperature. The few of them entered the cave on the side of the mountain. The cave was very deep. Along the way, everyone seemed to have lost interest in talking and carefully walked deeper into the cave. After walking for an hour through the winding bends, the view in front of them suddenly opened up. A high platform of man-made sculptures appeared in front of Thea. On the platform stood a huge throne. Behind the throne, there were 4 female statues that were either looking up or bowing their heads. The Sea King pointed to the female statues and said, "Back then, the artifacts in their hands were placed on those statues." Thea observed for a while. The god of death had fallen into a deep sleep. This island was just a diversion to hide the news of his death. The layout was not complicated. Or rather, the era he lived in was still pursuing the huge amount of magical power. The precision of the use of magic was far inferior to modern magic. You guys find 3 artifacts randomly and use them. Don't release them. I will find the frequency of the resonance and we can open the secret compartment. J.A. Valor took out her golden transmission bead first. Cassina also took out the golden seal that was snatched by the Black Manta Ray. The Sea King raised the trident in his hand. The fluctuations of the 3 artifacts were very similar. Thea used her heart to feel the difference between them. Her hands moved slightly to adjust the resonance of the 3 artifacts. Finally, at a certain point, the 3 artifacts reached a very strange wave band. An invisible breeze swept in all directions. The female statue behind the throne slowly separated, and a golden staff slowly rose from it. The staff was 2 meters long and golden all over. It could be seen that the initial shape of the staff was very similar to a trident. However, later on, the trident was artificially combined into one. The 2 sides were extremely sharp. Upon closer inspection, there was an ancient text engraved on it. This staff was very similar to the staff in a game that Thea remembered, the golden staff of Sindore. Thea looked back at everyone. Seeing that no one had any opinions, she reached out and took the staff. The staff neither rejected her nor took the initiative to cater to her. The sky changed color, the wind and clouds surged, but none of these appeared. Only a faint image was transmitted to Thea. In the image, an old man was betrayed. After that, he created an artifact and returned to his country for revenge. After being betrayed by everyone, the old man angrily hit the magic node with the staff, causing the destruction of the ancient Atlantis Empire. This old man was the god of death, Atlan. Thea compared it with her memory and sighed. It was a pity. He had a good idea to eliminate war and accommodate all foreign races. However, he was betrayed by his family and turned from a great hero to a devil in an instant. Just as Thea was about to carefully study the functions of the staff, she heard a loud shout. "People from the surface, put down the treasure in your hand." That is the sacred artifact of Atlantis. A large group of strangely dressed soldiers surrounded a young man holding a halberd and wearing a finned helmet walked in. Chapter 378. Where did this retard come from? Call it and see if it will answer you. Thea's strength had increased now, so she was not as cautious as before. Since the other party was rude, she would fight back. "People from the surface. You." Before the young man with the helmet and halberd could finish his sentence, Thea turned her staff around and a dark golden lightning shot towards him. He didn't know what was real and what was not, so he cautiously dodged the attack. However, he underestimated Sia's combat experience. Just as he raised his leg and took 2 steps to the left, he saw a sharp spike suddenly rise from the ground. Coincidentally, it was aimed at his indescribable thing. The young man was shocked. He no longer cared about his demeanor and directly fell back, avoiding this fatal attack. The spike avoided the greaves at a tricky angle and cut a big wound on his inner thigh. Blood was dripping. A few of his subordinates quickly helped him up. "Let go." The young man was very unhappy. His helmet had also fallen off, revealing a somewhat dignified face. His originally flashy clothes were now covered in mud because he fell to the ground. The leg guards on his cloak were also stained with blood. His originally arrogant aura had been forcefully reduced by half. "How dare you attack me?" The young man gritted his teeth and said. Thea replied scornfully, "Retard." The staff in her hand accumulated energy again. This was not a game. It was impossible to tell the user the attributes of a piece of equipment. The specific functions of the staff needed to be tested. "Stop, all of you stop." The Sea King Arthur Curry stood in the middle and stopped the 2 sides from continuing to fight. Seeing him jump out to be the leader, Thea went with the flow and continued to study the staff. This young man appeared here. He was wearing a fish helmet and holding a halberd. Combined with the strange soldiers behind him, it was not difficult to guess his identity. Sea Lord Amu, Arthur Curry's half-brother and his most direct competitor for the throne. The two brothers were very similar to Thor, and Loki from Marvel Next Door. The only difference was that the older brother was a mixed blood, while the younger brother was a pureblood. At Marvel Next Door, the older brother was a pureblood, while the younger brother was a mixed blood. There were too many similarities. The elder brother was reckless, and the younger brother was cunning. The elder brother didn't want the throne, but the throne automatically fell on his head. The younger brother wanted the throne, but he couldn't get it no matter what. Thea scoffed at this kind of melodramatic love and hate. As long as the other party didn't provoke her, she wouldn't meddle in other people's business. Emu, you're following me. The Sea King wasn't stupid. He immediately figured out the cause and effect. Emu pointed at Sia, and with a swipe of his finger, he included a large group of people. Arthur, you actually gave all the artifacts of Atlantis to these surface people. You don't deserve to be called the ruler of the seven seas. Thea looked at him with a smile and didn't say anything. Originally, only Diana was standing beside her. But now, due to Emu's aggressive actions, a few of the Sea King's companions instantly stood on his side. They didn't care about the divine artifact, but Emu wanted to take it back just like that. Nobody could tolerate it. Mera hesitated. Emu wanted to steal her husband's throne, so she couldn't support him. She looked left and right, but there was no other choice. She also stood on Thea's side. The negotiation between Emu and the Sea King broke down after a few words. In his heart, Sia was only powerful because of the artifact. The few surface people were like weak chickens in his eyes. He waved his hand and commanded his subordinates, "Kill those surface people. The artifact must belong to Atlantis. Don't hurt them." The Sea King Arthur Curry hurriedly shouted. In fact, he was afraid that Thea and the others wouldn't hold back their strength. The soldiers in front of him were all his people. Emu misunderstood the subject of his sentence. He thought that his wild brother was worried about his friends. He grinned and held his halberd, wanting to entangle the Sea King. But after the two brothers exchanged 2 blows, he realized that something was wrong. He saw his subordinates rushing forward in a hurry. Then, they were beaten back as if they were riding on clouds. Screams of pain could be heard endlessly. The Atlantean armor that usually had excellent defensive capabilities seemed to be non-existent. A few of his subordinates were sent flying dozens of meters away. There was a hint of misery in their screams. "Are you kidding me?" Emu stretched his neck and looked to the side while he was fighting. The one-sided situation that he had predicted had indeed occurred, but it was his side that had the advantage. He saw a valiant woman holding a sword and a shield send his elite guards flying one by one as if she was throwing rubbish. Only his guard captain lasted 3 moves, but Diana also took special care of him and broke one of his legs with a kick. The guard captain, who used to be extraordinarily brave, was now hugging his leg and howling in grief. "These guys aren't strong." Diana told Thea the truth. In her eyes, these guys were not much stronger than the German devils she fought before. "That's because you're much stronger than before." Thea could only explain it this way. In her eyes, these elite Atlantean soldiers were quite powerful. She could easily take out tens of thousands of them and beat up the armies of other countries. The only flaw was that only a small number of soldiers could fight in the water. These small number of soldiers had to bring special breathing equipment. Otherwise, they would not be able to fight. Regardless of whether Atlantis leaders wanted peace or war, their bodies were no longer suitable for living on the surface. Conquering the land and restoring the glory of the past was just a dream talk. People on the surface are so powerful. This woman is Greek. Amazon. Emu almost broke down. He finally realized what the Sea King meant when he said not to hurt people. He was so ashamed that he wanted to find a hole to hide in. He tried hard to keep his mind calm. Then, he carefully observed Diana's appearance and equipment. There was no doubt that she had a full set of divine weapons. However, the forging style was obviously different from the Atlanteans. Unlike Arthur Curry, who was a wild child, Emu and even Malar were members of the royal family who had received strict education. It was true that Emu was arrogant, but he still had a basic sense of identification. After careful observation, it was not difficult to notice the difference between Diana's appearance and that of the current humans. "Take your men and leave this place now." The Sea King looked around and found that most of the soldiers had superficial injuries. They would recover after 2 days of recuperation in the water. He nodded at Diana to express his gratitude and turned his head to order Emu loudly. Emu was a lone commander. He needed this to get out of the embarrassing situation. He snorted and ran away with his defeated subordinates. Sigh. The Sea King sighed. There were too many troublesome things. The people on the surface did not accept him, and the people on the bottom of the sea were rejecting him. He was like a rat in a bellows, suffering from both sides. Everything here was over. He held Malar's hand and bade farewell to the others. Thea looked at the scene. There was no explanation document, so she could only go back and study the functions of the staff. She also left the cave with Diana and the others. The cave that was in full swing just now regained its tranquility as if nothing had happened. Chapter 379. Diana continued to work on her foundation, while Thea returned to Star City alone with the little jaguar and the staff. She handed the little jaguar to someone else and began to study the functions of the staff. The attributes were easy to judge. The staff had earth and water attributes. Thea dealt with Emu's spikes with the magic provided by the staff. With the power of the staff, Thea could form a pseudo-cycle of light, darkness, earth, fire, water, and wind in her body. It was still far from the real 6 attributes, but there were some embryonic forms. With the help of the earth attribute magic in the staff, Thea could already cast some more advanced earth attribute spells. The next time she dealt with the leopard lady, she might be able to solve it with a dungeon spell or a large-scale earthfisher spell. After studying for 3 days, Thea finally summed up a few characteristics of the staff. The God of Death staff was the best for earth attribute and water attribute spells, with about 3 times the effect. It was slightly worse for wind, light, and dark attributes, with only a little more than double the effect. The fire attribute was the worst, with less than half the effect. The staff contained 2 very ancient magic, one of which was to control sea beasts. Thea was initially very confused about the definition of sea beasts. After studying for a long time, she realized that the staff referred to the superlarge ancient sea creatures. After searching her memory for a long time, Thea could only remember one sea beast. She only remembered that there was such a standard ancient sea beast hidden in the abyss of the Atlantean capital. It looked roughly like a hybrid of a crab and an octopus. For tens of thousands of years, the Atlanteans could only mind their own business until Arthur Curry returned. His outstanding telepathic ability could control all sea creatures. Although it was difficult to deal with this ancient giant beast, it could be said that he could slightly control the sea beast. It was because of this extraordinary ability that the Atlantean Council of Elders broke the 10,000-year-old Iron Law and allowed him, a mixed blood, to inherit the throne. If Thea went to Atlantis with the staff and claimed that she could control their biggest biological weapon, the Council of Elders would definitely kill her. Although it was a good idea, it could easily destroy the relationship between the two sides. Moreover, the strength of the deep-sea giant beasts would be greatly reduced on land. Thea secretly remembered this spell and wanted to see if she could improve it in the future and integrate it into her existing knowledge system. The description of the remaining function was even more vague. Thea could only understand that it was a combination of imprisonment and sealing. It would ignore the target's size and imprison them in a very small crystal. There was no information on whether there was a limit to the target's strength or how long the imprison could last. Maybe the God of Death who made the wand would know, but this guy didn't leave any information in the wand. Thea had no choice but to run to the poison ivy's greenhouse in the metropolis. She tried to find a bunch of plants for a long time, but it was completely ineffective. Was the level of the plants too low, or did the confinement spell have other requirements for the target? There were too many options, and Thea couldn't figure it out in a short time. In the experiment, Thea found another function that wasn't really a function. This wand was different from the wands used by modern wizards and wizards. It was also a weapon. When waved around, it would create a strong wind. If hit, it would kill. If touched, it would be injured. Poison ivy's man-eating plants were enough to prove this point. Boss, do you have a grudge against my plants? Poison ivy's eyelids drooped as she said helplessly. As the number of interactions increased, Thea also revealed her true colors. She found that Thea was younger than herself by 2 years. Poison ivy was no longer as afraid of her as before and could even joke with her from time to time. I'm doing a little experiment. Oh right, have you found the things I asked you to collect? Seeing that she had destroyed a corner of Poison Ivy's greenhouse, Thea was a little speechless. The new weapon that she had obtained was more like a hammer than a wand. She had strengthened it many times, otherwise, ordinary people on Earth wouldn't be able to handle this ancient Atlantean artifact. When it came to business, Poison Ivy became a little more serious. Billy Batson, I've already approached this child. His hair and blood have been collected quite a bit. According to your request, every time I talk to him, I've recorded it. I've also entered the original audio file into the main control computer. Boss, what's the use of this child? You didn't allow me to bewitch him. That child is too childish. I'm just chatting with him. It's really boring. Poison Ivy said with some confusion and some pride. It's just a casual move. Thea said lightly. Billy Batson, the future superhero Shazam. She said that it was a casual move, but in fact, this was her real purpose. Shazam and Black Adam were the only 2 mortals in the world with abundant divine power. However, this divine power was not cultivated by them, but was given by a ritual. When Shazam received the power, he could instantly contend with Superman. This was something that Thea had been envious of for many years. However, absorbing their divine power was not enough. Thea needed to spend a lot of time to artificially downgrade the given divine power into her own magic power. When her magic power reached the peak, only then could she transform it into divine power, a divine power that belonged solely to her. The old wizard, Shazam, was born 9,000 years ago. He was originally a shepherd boy. After receiving the blessings of the gods, he became the first Shazam. In the magic desert era, after the gods retreated, he thought that he was a true god. Unfortunately, he only had power but not vision. He thought that he was the guardian of the world, but in fact, he had done countless foolish things. Pandora was like that, Black Adam was like that, and Billy Batson was also like that. He chose Billy Batson as his successor. As long as Billy shouted out the 2 words Shazam, he would be able to obtain Superman's power. His standard for choosing his successor was extremely vague. The most virtuous person. How could there be a virtuous person among humans? This was just a beautiful goal, an impossible moral standard. The old Shazam, who was a shepherd boy, slapped his thigh and came up with such a standard. Although it was a melodramatic standard, at least there was a standard. Then, how did the old Shazam choose his successor? He cast a wide net and searched the whole world. When he found one, he saw if he was suitable, brainwashed him, and let him go. He searched again, and repeated the cycle again. The Heaven's Eye Association found thousands of people who had lost their memories. These people were all done by the old Shazam. They were all the most virtuous people he had chosen. It was such an unreliable selection. In the end, he did not know if it was because he was annoyed or because of other reasons, but Billy Batson came into his sight. The old man immediately decided that this child was the most virtuous person. The old man only felt that the 15-year-old Billy Batson's parents were killed when he was young, and he did not take the path of revenge on society. Therefore, he insisted that this child was the most virtuous person. Billy Batson's childhood experience when his parents died was indeed worthy of sympathy. However, just because he did not take the wrong path, the old man concluded that he was the most virtuous person. There were 6 billion people in the world. Thea felt that she could find tens of millions of such candidates. Chapter 380. It was no exaggeration to say that there were not many superheroes who had a happy family. Were Superman and Batman considered the most virtuous people? Was Green Arrow considered one? Thea even felt that she was considered one. Old man Shazam felt that he had found his successor. After a simple ceremony, He handed over the divine power that the gods had given him and the heavy responsibility of protecting the world that he had imagined to a child with no social experience. He didn't pass on his life experience. Thea felt that the old man most likely didn't have any life experience himself. He didn't teach the use of magic either, so Shazan could only fight with Superman with his fists. In short, old man Shazan didn't care about anything. As if he had completed a mission, he pushed the confused Billy Batson out of the door. After that, Billy Batson was as happy as a runaway wild horse, showing off everywhere. His immature mind made him forget himself and did a bunch of stupid things, which led to Black Adam's pursuit. Billy Batson, who had forgotten the pain after the scar healed, didn't learn his lesson at all. He unscrupulously distributed the divine power to his friends. Even his pet, a tiger in the zoo, received the divine power. A tiger that could use magic. Thea didn't know what the gods would think if they saw this scene. She only felt that this was a big joke. Thea felt that she had done a good thing by absorbing the divine power that had been misused. Billy Batson was just a child. The heavy responsibility of protecting the world was not something he could bear. Thea felt that she had never been so righteous. She ordered Poison Vine Lady to continue to keep in contact with Billy Batson. The more samples she collected from his voice, the better. With a lot of gene samples, Thea came to a planet that was somewhat similar to Earth. Death Knell was responsible for grasping the dark information of Earth, so Fiora grasped the information of several nearby galaxies. During the days when she followed General Zod, Fiora had always been in charge of contacting various aliens and collecting resources. The task that Thea had given her now was to collect information and build her own force. Fiora was very skilled in doing these things. Gertrude had also sent a lot of mind-controlled soldiers from the controlled planets. In addition to Fiora's high-level combat power, she had already opened up a situation on the nearby planets. Clone an Earthling? Fiora took the gene sample and was a little puzzled. However, her character would never question anything and would only carry it out. I want to collect deep-sea beasts within our sphere of influence. I want to do some experiments. In addition, collect some plants and send them to the Poison Vine Lady on Earth. The sea beasts on Earth cannot be touched for the time being. Thea thinks that the alien sea beasts can also be controlled. The mission Thea gave Fiora was the most important one. She had to collect materials ranging from man-made clean energy to plants, animals, and rare metals. Thea herself had plenty of knowledge about krypton genes. The modified cloning device was completely adapted to the human body on Earth. Unlike Lex Luthor, who needed 10 years to clone Superman, Superman's genes were too powerful. At this time, Billy Batson was just an ordinary person. Thea's standards were very low. She didn't need the clone to have high intelligence. She just needed to be able to shout out Shazam when the time came. The clone doesn't need any intelligence. The voice must match the standard of the sample sent by Poison Ivy. The higher the match, the better. Thea reminded Fiora again before returning to Earth. It's really hard to find Earth element magic. Shazam's matter was a long-term plan. Thea still had an urgent matter that had to be solved. That was the problem of her own Earth element magic. After completing all the elements, she could absorb a huge amount of magic and become a god in one fell swoop. This was her goal. She always felt incomplete if she lacked one element. She didn't have any clue at first. However, when Thea saw the Sea King's trident, she had found her goal by combining her memory and a lot of real information. That was Diana's half-brother, Hercules, the god of strength in human myths and legends. According to the records of various ancient books, he was definitely an earth attribute god. Hercules did not fall into the twilight of the gods. Instead, he was trapped in a different dimension. The key to opening the different dimension was the Sea King's trident. 10,000 years ago, the Atlantis and the Greek gods on the continent formed an alliance to fight against the giant creatures, the descendants of the ancient giants. They joined forces to drive the giant creatures into a barren different dimension. However, the giant creatures resisted very strongly. At the crucial moment, Hercules walked into that world and closed the door from the other side. This human hero, the warrior of Olympus, chose to sacrifice himself. His ideals were absolutely noble, and his goal could be considered as great. However, 10,000 years had passed. He, who was in a different dimension, fought against many giant creatures alone. His mind had fallen into madness. His lofty ideals no longer existed. What was left was only hysterical madness. Forming a team, pulling people, attacking monsters, and absorbing divinity. Thea felt that if she called more people, it was not impossible to push the Hercules away. However, now that Diana was involved, it was very difficult to do. From killing him to capturing him and restoring his consciousness, the difficulty of this suddenly increased by several levels. Thea had to use countless people to do this. At least, she had to call in the Martian hunter, who had always been a bystander, to help. In the original timeline, it was a professor who studied Atlantis who stole the trident and opened the seal. Thea did not intend to interfere with this matter. Hercules was released, and the giant creatures that were sealed with him would all be released. There were too many implications, and no hero's reputation could bear it. Thea instructed Death Knell to find the archaeologist and secretly provide financial support to speed up his research and encourage him to unearth more Atlantis ruins. The genetic medicine for his parents had entered the later stages of testing. Death Knell found many loyal subordinates to inject it. The response was excellent. Everyone who was injected felt like they had been reborn. Are there any after effects? Thea asked Death Knell beside her. They were watching a mercenary who had been injected with the genetic medicine perform a show of lifting a truck through the monitor. Thea did not care how much power this thing could bring to humans. Longevity and no after effects were what she valued the medicine for. Currently, there are no after effects. Everyone's state of mind is about the same as before, except for some excitement and insomnia, Death Knell answered carefully, emphasizing each word. Thea looked at his expression and said casually, "Are you afraid that these people will surpass you? Don't worry, these are just beginner genetic medicine. I've already prepared a few bottles of advanced ones. If they don't have after effects, you can inject them too. The effects of the medicine will directly overpower the Mirakuru you were injected with. Your leadership position will not change. I trust you a lot. After all, you are my brother's friend, right?" Thea laughed and walked out of the basement, leaving Death Knell speechless. Chapter 381. Thea didn't mention Oliver casually. She had a premonition that Oliver would appear at any moment. It had been 4 years since the shipwreck incident, and many things had changed because of her involvement. Thea wouldn't be surprised if the green arrow popped up in the next second. The gene concoction still required further observation of the various parameters of the test subjects. Thea also wanted to wait for Oliver to return before gathering everyone together to inject the gene concoction. Otherwise, everyone would have to explain everything at length, and it would be troublesome just thinking about it. The metropolis gradually calmed down, and everything seemed to be going in a good direction. Thea was busy with her experiments, Luther continued to hide in the dark, planning something, and Superman worked while doing good deeds. From fighting criminals to rescuing stray cats, there was nothing he didn't do. From time to time, he would do something fun with Louise Lane, and the world seemed to have settled down. Sister Thea. The one who rushed to the lab was Thea's first disciple, Damian Wayne. Because of Shadow's ambiguous relationship with Oliver, she wasn't officially his disciple. At most, she was just acting as his disciple. Plus, she had a good foundation, and with a little training, she became a hero. Now, Shadow worked with Thea every night to fight criminals. The only one left to learn from Thea was Damian, the naughty child. The two were very familiar with each other, and even Diana had seen Damian before. Thea never put on airs, and she would usually chat with Damian happily. To some extent, the two's relationship was better than Damian's relationship with his strict parents. Thea ignored Damian's yelling and continued with her experiments. The super gene optimization fluid was basically complete. According to her calculations, the Miller-Kulu gene concoction, which was stronger than Death Knell's, was about the same as Captain America's super soldier serum. However, the amount was too little. After all, it wasn't appropriate to always draw blood from Führer. Thea was still waiting for the final experiment results before she could inject it into her parents. Jason. Jason is dead. Damien grabbed her arm and shook it hard. Thea's eyes were fixed on the liquid in the test tube. She subconsciously replied, "Oh." After 2 seconds, her thoughts were pulled back. Jason. The one beside Batman. Dead. Damien nodded his head painfully and looked at Thea with anticipation. "Hey. Don't even think about it. I can't bring the dead back to life." Thea guessed what the kid was thinking. "Are you kidding me? Resurrecting the dead? If I was so strong, why would I study medicine?" Damien had learned magic from her for more than a year, and he knew the difficulty of resurrection. The level involved was too high. He couldn't help but sigh, and his little face drooped. Jason Todd's ideas were similar to Damien's. Both of them didn't agree with Batman's principle of not killing. He was one of the few people in the Batcave who could talk to Damien. Jason Todd. Thea listened to Damien's story and thought of the young man she saw that day. He was stubborn, confident, and unwilling to admit defeat. Now that a bomb had taken the life of such an outstanding young man, Thea sighed. It was fine if she didn't know, but now that she knew, she had to pay him a visit no matter what. After opening a portal that led directly to the Batcave, Thea pulled Damien and walked in. There were many familiar faces in the Batcave. The 3 old men, Old Gordon, Old Butler, and Old Fox were all there. Nightwing Dick Grayson, Batgirl Barbara, Catwoman, and Talia were also standing or sitting nearby. When they saw Thea and Damien walk out of the light screen, they just nodded slightly and didn't have the mood to talk. Batman's tall figure stood alone in the dark. Just like Luther didn't need pity, Batman didn't need comfort. Thea didn't say much. She just lifted the white cloth on the platform. The body had obviously been cleaned up. The blood and dust had been washed away, but the bruises on the body were still a sign of the abuse the body's owner had suffered when he was alive. Their originally scattered gazes followed her movements and gathered on Thea. After all, she was one of the few extraordinaries in the world. Even Batman, who was originally standing straight, turned his head and looked at her expectantly. "His situation is very strange. I don't think he's completely dead. That's the only way I can describe it." Thea examined the body repeatedly and came up with this plausible conclusion. Jason's heart has stopped beating, but his brain is still resisting the illusion. In other words, his body is dead, but his brain is still alive. However, this time will be very short. If he realizes that everything in the outside world has ended, then he will die at any time. Thea crossed her arms and said thoughtfully, "Do you have a way?" Batman asked anxiously. Thea didn't answer directly. She took out the most advanced medical cabin from the dimension ring. According to Gideon's estimation, the medical cabin's technology was at least 70 years ahead of Earth's current technology. A few idlers quickly came up to help. Wiring, electrifying, testing, and a series of tasks were completed. Only then did the bruised Jason Todd enter. Scanning and formulating a medical plan. Although Batman's mind was in a mess, he forced himself to calm down and discuss the plan with her. The two quickly agreed on a plan. The medical cabin's shield closed and the 4 mechanical arms began to work quickly. Batman saw Jason enter the medical cabin and seemed to have some hope. He quickly asked Thea, what happened after that? However, Thea didn't say what he wanted to hear. The situation is very complicated. His heart has stopped beating, but his consciousness hasn't dissipated. This means that he is using the remaining life force in his body to maintain his life. He is overdrawing his life force every minute and every second. This kind of overdraft is comprehensive. I estimate that the probability of him waking up is less than 10%. Even if he wakes up, he won't be able to continue fighting. What about magic? Batman, who had always been hostile to supernatural forces, asked bitterly. This involves what modern medicine calls consciousness. We call it the level of the soul. The effect of magic is minimal. Thea shook her head and briefly explained. It's fine as long as he can come back to life. Batman's voice was hoarse. Unlike the usual voice changer, this was his own voice. It was just that he hadn't drunk water for a long time, so it was particularly harsh, like a hard object rubbing against sandpaper. This time, the medical cabin's working time was unusually long. It took a full 3 hours. "There's a heartbeat." Nightwing, who had been staring at the instrument on the side, shouted happily. However, Thea and Batman's faces were gloomy. Jason Todd didn't sit up as energetically as usual. There was only a weak pulse, indicating that this person had escaped death. However, he was still far from coming back to life. What should they do next? This thought lingered in the minds of the few of them. Chapter 382. Unlike Talia, Jason's physical injuries aren't hard to heal. However, the damage to his spirit, or rather, his soul, is very difficult to heal, Thea explained patiently, worried that the people in the room wouldn't understand. Healing soul damage isn't a sorcerer's forte. On the contrary, classes like shamans and witch doctors are better at it. The other solution I can think of is Nandabart's Lazarus Pool. It should be able to heal his soul. Thea mentioned another place they were familiar with. It was up to them to decide whether to accept it or not. Batman hesitated for less than a minute before he made the decision to save Jason. Thea was satisfied with his decisiveness. "I have a friend here. His condition is similar to Jason's." Batman waved his hand. 1 sheep was the same as herding, 2 sheep was the same as letting them go. He took them all with him. Thea quickly contacted Shadow to change her equipment and bring her father along. The convenience of the teleportation portal was demonstrated here. In less than 5 minutes, she brought Shadow and Yarrow Fei, who were wearing green Kevlar and carrying a bow and arrows, over. Knowing Batman's taboo, Thea didn't teleport directly to the Batcave. Instead, she waited outside with Shadow. Soon, everyone was there. "Yarrow Fei!" Talia cried out in alarm. Although Yarrow Fei was older than her by more than 10 years, he was indeed personally trained by Talia. The two of them still had a bit of affection for each other. Looking at his half-dead appearance, she couldn't help but sigh in her heart. Batman was originally a little curious about Sia's friend and wanted to find out more. Now that he found out that it was actually related to Talia, and that Shadow, Damien, and Barbara knew all of them, he gave up. "Call Superman too. I'll contact Diana. By the way, do you know the Martian Manhunter? If you do, bring him too," Thea said casually. Batman almost vomited blood. "Are we all right? Do we have to call so many heroes? Although my father-in-law is skilled in martial arts and has great foresight, there's no need for so many people to gang up on him." For a few seconds, Batman thought that he was hearing things because he was worried about Jason. But when he saw Thea's serious expression and knew that she was not joking, he became serious as well. "I need a reason." Thea could only use the demon sword as the origin to tell Batman about the possible existence of the 3 palace demons behind Ninja Master. A great devil from a different dimension. Batman muttered to himself, repeating these words twice. "Not necessarily. As far as I know, that great demon won't directly descend upon our world. He needs some mediums." Thea's cautiousness was in line with Batman's usual course of action. He might have taken this opportunity to completely cut off the connection between the Ninja Master and the demon. "There's no need to call them." Batman saw Thea pick up the phone and interrupted her. "There's a strange enchantment around Nandabart that blocks all superpowers and magic. There's no point for Superman and the others to come." Thea paused for a second and felt lucky that she didn't steal the sword herself. It seemed that she did the right thing. After thinking about it, it made sense. Ninja Master had enemies all over the world. Without any protection, he would have been killed long ago. She put down the phone gloomily. Fortunately, she was not weak and had a power armor. Even if there was an anti-magic enchantment and the power armor's magic power could not be used, she could still crush most people with her machinery alone. Yes, Thea was also planning to visit Nandabart. After all, she had learned so many martial arts from them. She wanted to go and see this world-famous institute of higher learning. No one asked her to go, but if she wanted to go, no one would object. The team was quickly selected. Batman, Talia, Nightwing, Barbara, Thea, and Shadow, a total of 6 people. Catwoman, who was unknown whether she was the main wife or the mistress, should not go and cause trouble for the ninja master. Damien also wanted to go, but the others rejected his request in unison. What a joke! It was better for Damien to stay at home obediently since he could start a fight at any moment. How were they going to go? Everyone was waiting for Thea to open the door. Where's Nandabart? I've never been there. Thea saw everyone staring at her and said helplessly. It must be a place you've been to before. It must have a certain impression, right? Batman asked 7 or 8 questions in a row. Thea was speechless. This guy was using the opportunity to get information again. You're good if you can analyze it, but it's impossible for Thea to say it herself. Without answering any questions, Thea asked for the coordinates. Then, she gestured for the others to wait and flew out of the atmosphere. Nandabart was in the Middle East, while Thea and the others were in Gotham. They were separated by an entire Earth. Her X-ray vision could see them in a straight line, but it would take too much effort to see through the entire Earth. According to Batman's coordinates, they quickly found a valley. However, when Thea was about to look inside, she felt an obscure energy wave blocking her vision. Ninja Master's setup was different from the Heaven's Eye Society's setup. Thea felt that it was different, but the effect was to block all unnatural forces. She remembered that in the original plot, Barry Allen ran to Nandabart and didn't feel anything strange when he rescued the Green Arrow team. However, after that, his speed was blocked in the Heaven's Eye Society. Perhaps the level of the shield was not high enough, or there was something like a switch. Thea didn't think too much about the future. She landed on the ground and opened a portal that led to the outside of the valley. Her spirit wrapped around the 2 unconscious heroes and stepped in first. She walked out of the portal and began to put on the power armor. When everyone else came out, she removed the spirit of the 2 heroes and carried them on her back for the rest of the journey. Shadow automatically carried her father on her back, and Nightwing also carried Jason on his back. The group walked towards the valley at a constant speed. If the negotiation fails, you can fight, but you're not allowed to kill. Batman walked at the front and said without looking back. Nightwing, Barbara, and Shadow, who didn't dare to talk to Batman, nodded at the same time. Thea and Talia had different thoughts, but they didn't directly refuse. Batman, what are you doing here? The old ninja master, dressed in fancy clothes, walked out of the shadows on the side. As if he didn't see his daughter, he only looked at Batman who was walking in the front. He knew Batman's true identity, but he didn't intend to reveal it. My assistant is seriously injured and needs the help of the Pool of Lazarus. Haha. The ninja master laughed loudly. When Thea felt that the old man was acting a little too much, he stopped laughing. I said before that as long as you accept the position of the demon leader, everyone, including me, will listen to your orders. After that, the ninja master stared at Batman carefully. I refuse. Sure enough, Batman gave him a reply that he had expected and made sense. The negotiation failed in just a few sentences. Thea felt that the 2 understood each other very well. The conversation was just a formality, and no one expected to move the other with words. Chapter 383. Attack! Attack! Both of them shouted at the same time. Batman threw darts at the ninja master. Hundreds of assassins from the League of Assassins appeared around them and pounced on them fiercely. In the face of the arrows, Thea raised the energy shield of her armor to protect them. She was very relaxed. She was ready to watch this rare battle between father and son-in-law. Lex Luthor could create an energy shield. With so many extraterrestrial technologies to learn from, it was too easy for Thea to create this thing. This shield was useless against the Sea King and Superman, but against the ordinary people from the League of Assassins, it was too powerful. Powered by the White Dwarf, the entire shield was huge and thick. A few of the Assassin League's minions who were charging at the front were slightly shocked. However, this group of people had always been trained to look down on technological weapons. They raised their large swords and slashed at the energy shield. There was no sound of metal clashing, no scene of swords breaking the shield. Their swords seemed to have hit the air, but no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't cut through. A few of them didn't believe it and slashed with their swords. Without exception, they were all stunned. Idiots. Thea glared at them coldly. How terrible it is to be uneducated. It was enough to supply electricity to a city with a population of 1 million for a year. That was a huge amount of energy. If they wanted to rely on more than 100 people, each with a steel knife, to use up all this energy, it would take at least 10 years without sleep or rest. Everyone in the shield was surprised at first, but they soon felt relieved. Nightwing had been with Batman for many years and had seen a lot of advanced technology. Shadow and Barbara had also known Thea for a long time. It wasn't surprising that she could come up with something like this. A bunch of League of Assassins soldiers couldn't do anything to the shield. Talia was nervous for a while, but when she found that the enemy couldn't enter, she was relieved. She focused on watching her father and Batman fight. The two of them punched and kicked. The Ninja Master's moves were strange and deadly, while Batman took advantage of his brain and integrated the essence of fighting in the world, changing his moves to the extreme. Why are they fighting so conservatively? Thea's fighting skills were not inferior to the two of them. She watched for a while and soon found something wrong. Whether it was Batman or Ninja Master, they were too conservative. In the first 10 moves, it was understandable that they were more defensive than offensive. But now, after 40 to 50 moves, they were still more defensive than offensive. This was too problematic. When Thea watched them fight for 80 moves, she finally understood. Ninja Master really likes this son-in-law of his. He can't wait for him to quickly take over his mantle. Today, he didn't even use 1/10 of the momentum he had when he fought with Thea. He only wants to lose by 1 or 2 moves, and then he can complete the job of handing over. Batman was a smart person, so he naturally saw through his father-in-law's plan. Even if he was beaten to death, he would never take over the League of Assassins. He was also desperately defending, with no intention of attacking. Thea looks at the stupid moves of the father-in-law and son-in-law and understands what they are thinking. The actors don't work hard and only care about slacking. Her desire to watch the show fades a lot. At that moment, Batman gave her a look. Thea thought for a moment and understood what he meant. Or rather, this was Ninja Master's intention. My energy shield can't be activated. Bring your equipment. Let's charge in. Talia, you stay by my side and lead the way. Save Jason and the others as soon as possible. Thea turned around and ordered the others. 3, 2, 1. Charge with me. They were still outside the barrier. Thea didn't know how strong the barrier was in Nandabat. She didn't take her bow and arrow. She cancelled the barrier and raised her hands to shoot out 2 streams of cold air. They quickly rushed out of the League of Assassins' encirclement. Hurry, hurry. Thea kept urging them. Barbara's skills had improved greatly in the past year, and her combat awareness was also much better than before. Talia had to lead the way, and Nightwing and Shadow were carrying people, so it was inconvenient for them to attack. The task of bringing up the rear fell to Barbara. She kept throwing smoke grenades and bat darts to the back and sides. Amidst the flames, they rushed into Nandabat. The interior was built in an antique style. The ground was paved with bluestone bricks, and there were torches on both sides of the road. They could hear faint screams in the distance. It was as if they had suddenly entered an ancient tomb from a civilized society. It was solemn, dignified, and filled with murderous intent. Only Thea casually looked at the layout of the environment. Barbara was under more and more pressure. Shadow handed her father to Nightwing and took out her bow and arrow. She put all kinds of high-tech arrowheads on her bow to stop the pursuers. Talia led them left and right. The soldiers who jumped out were all frozen in place by Thea. It's here. They came to a wall. Talia reached out and pulled the mechanism on the side. A huge rock rose, and a pool of clear water came into view. How is it? Barbara wiped the sweat from her forehead and asked Thea, who was studying the water. Thea shook her head. My abilities are all sealed. I can't tell if there's anything wrong with the water. But the monitor in my power armor did detect a large amount of energy in the water. Don't hesitate. Throw them in at the same time. Because of the demon's influence, although the energy in the water could repair souls, it could also make people go crazy. Thea 1.0 in the original timeline suffered a lot. Would it be better to let the two of them share the pain? Nightwing took out the rope he had prepared, wrapped it around their waists, and slowly put them in. The pursuers were still coming. Thea didn't dare to use the frost gun to seal the door because once it was sealed, they wouldn't be able to get out for a while. She picked up a long sword from one of the soldiers and blocked the door with the others. Nightwing Dick Grayson was the only male present. Although he had already broken up with Barbara, their relationship was still a little fragile. At this moment, he was extremely valiant, his twin batons flying up and down. He already had 70% to 80% of Batman's combat skills, beating up a bunch of League of Assassins soldiers until they were crying for their parents. How long will it take? Barbara jumped into the air, kicked an enemy over, and threw an enemy out with a long whip. Then, she asked Thea. Thea looked back at the water. It was bubbling as if something was boiling. It should be soon, Thea answered vaguely. She didn't know how long it would take. She couldn't see the magic fluctuation, the energy flow, or even the enemies hiding in the dark. She was used to the existence of the Eye of Horus. Now that it was suddenly sealed, she was very uncomfortable. Thea just thought of the Eye of Horus and suddenly found that her vision was restored. Her body shook, and the magic connection was restored. Nandabart's anti-magic enchantment suddenly disappeared. Yarrow Fay and Jason Todd jumped out of the pool. Their eyes were bloodshot, and their mouths were growling, revealing a ferocious glint. Chapter 384. The green pool water did not calm down after the two jumped out. Instead, it became more and more intense. The disappearance of Nandabart's anti-magic field did not make her happy. Thea felt a drop of cold sweat flowing down her forehead to her cheek. A huge amount of evil energy continued to roll out from the pool water. Thea did not know if this was originally the case or if Jason and Yarrow Fay broke some kind of barrier after entering the water, and a world full of evil energy was connected to this place through the pool water. Two magicians' hands tied up Jason and Yarrow Fay, who were more like beasts than humans, and threw them to Nightwing. Thea looked at the pool water again. Disorderly, evil, chaotic energy was seeping into this world through the gap in the pool water. Even this strand of energy did not stop. It was constantly bewitching the combatants at the scene. The few heroes had strong willpower and were not affected. The Alliance's soldiers had also been through strict training and did not show any signs of being bewitched for a while. But Thea knew that this state would not last long. As the gap in the passage expanded, more and more evil energy seeped into this world. Pure willpower would not last long. Bruce, something's wrong. A passage full of evil energy has opened. You and Ninja Master stop immediately. I'll let the people here withdraw quickly. I'll try to seal this place. Thea told Batman telepathically. But she waited for half a minute and did not get a response. Did he not hear it or what? Thea was puzzled. Suddenly, she realized that she was dumb. Batman did not know telepathic telepathy. He did not have this skill even if he wanted to. Just as she was about to use the Eye of Horus to check the situation outside, she saw that the power armor's communication system had intercepted a new call request. Thea opened it, and Batman's vigorous figure appeared on the comm. Your system is really good. Did Felicity do it? I heard what you said, but Ninja Master suddenly went berserk a minute ago. He can't stop now. After Batman said that, he turned the camera to Ninja Master, only to see that the old man, who had been rather elegant before, had changed drastically. His symptoms were even more severe than Jason's and Yarrow Fay's, and when he attacked with both hands, there was a faint blood-red energy. He has been demonized. After soaking in the pool for so many years, his body is no longer human. Thea only took one look, and combined it with the other party's demonized physique when they fought that day. She instantly came to a conclusion. Can he still recover? I don't know. I'll close the gap here first. We'll talk about the future later. The two quickly ended the call. Thea turned to Talia and asked, Can you restrain these people? Your father has gone crazy outside. We can only rely on you here. Talia had always been an ambitious woman. If it weren't for her relationship with Batman, she wouldn't have had anything to do with justice. Hearing that Ninja Master had gone crazy, a trace of sadness flashed across her face. However, this trace of emotion quickly dissipated and was replaced by joy. "Let me try. If you can help me get the old man's ring, then I'll be more confident," Talia said in a low voice. Thea glanced at her coldly. "Put away your schemes. I know your rules. Anyone with a ring can order them around. Calm them down first and don't cause trouble for me. The other side of the pool is an extremely evil world. If my seal fails, no one here will survive." Talia wasn't annoyed that she didn't fall for her trick. She took down 2 enemies in a row with her katana, jumped onto a high platform, and shouted, "Brothers of the Alliance, I'm Talia Al Ghul, the eldest daughter of Ninja Master. Listen to me." It had to be said that Talia had a high prestige in the Alliance. When she betrayed the Alliance, there were hundreds of people who swore to follow her. Although the people present weren't that loyal to her, they still believed in her. A large number of black-clothed assassins of the Alliance stopped attacking, wanting to hear what she had to say. "Ninja Master has gone crazy." Talia's words were shocking. "Nonsense. Impossible. You traitor." The originally quiet crowd boiled up again. Ninja Master had taken in disciples all over the world. For a moment, the black-clothed assassins who spoke various languages cursed at Talia. However, many of the classic curses were related to their ancestors. This group of people didn't dare to use Ninja Master, so they seemed a little weak. Thea was busy inscribing a sealing circle. The Constantine family had dealt with demons for generations, so they were very good at summoning and sealing spells. Although they were a little unhappy with Talia taking advantage of the situation to seize power, they still helped her. A huge water mirror appeared in front of everyone. The people in the mirror were Batman and Ninja Master who were fighting outside the building. The old man's eyes were red, and the sound coming out of his mouth was like some kind of beast. His entire temperament had changed drastically. Anyone could see that something was wrong. "See. He's gone crazy. I'm the real leader. Sardin, do you still believe me? Felix, have you forgotten who taught you archery?" Talia used both the carrot and the stick. While telling the truth, she also tried to rope in a few assassins who were somewhat close to her. Their attitude soon relaxed. Many of them were loyal, but only to the system. If Ninja Master had really gone crazy, then it wasn't impossible for them to be loyal to Talia. "Let's go." Thea was sweating profusely. She didn't know if the other party was a demon from the 3 palaces. She only felt that she had never faced such great pressure before. Ninja Master was obviously being held back by something and wasn't using all his strength to break through the barrier between the 2 worlds. Talia knew that she wasn't bluffing. She immediately ordered the group to run out. "You guys go out first. I'll see if I can help." Nightwing had the demeanor of a general. He knocked out Yarrow Faye and Jason and ordered Barbara and Shadow to go out first. He stayed behind to help. Thea nodded at him. She was currently spending all her energy on the circle. She really didn't have time to pay attention to other things. When Thea was chanting loudly, a mysterious rhythm filled the small room. The other side's resistance increased. The tunnel between the 2 worlds didn't shrink. It actually grew bigger. In such a distant exchange, Sia was able to determine that her opponent was not just a little bit stronger than her. She was fighting on her home ground, and her opponent was able to increase the gap on her side despite having obvious constraints. His strength was far greater than that of Horus back then. Thea took out the God of Death staff from her space ring. She released a clone. Her body and the clone's minds were connected. They cast spells at the same time. They slowed down her opponent's breakworld speed. The God of Death staff strengthened Thea's casting power and shortened her casting time. Suddenly, things seemed to be going well for her. Thea's eyes shrank. She saw a black shadow come out of the gap. It was like lightning. Chapter 385. The doppelganger threw a magic missile at the enemy, while Thea took advantage of the moment when the enemy was unsteady to kill the monster with a stab to its chest. Damn it, it really was the 3 palace demon. Thea sized up the monster she killed. It had bull horns, white hair, 3 pairs of eyes on its face, and dark red skin. This should be the son of the three-palace demon. How frustrating. Thea looked at the corpse sinking into the ground and shouted to Nightwing, "The enemy is not dead. He can absorb all the negative emotions in the world. We can only restrain him." Nightwing saw the enemy killed by Thea emerge from the ground unscathed. He nodded and said, "Leave it to me." With that, he began to fight with the son of the three-palace demon with a short stick. With his help, Thea was finally able to restart the seal. The barrier that was about to be sealed was damaged by the enemy's sudden attack. The two sides were in a stalemate again. "Unknown spellcaster, can you hear my voice?" Just as Thea was trying to push the enemy to the other side, a weak young girl's voice appeared in Thea's mind. "Who are you?" Thea was very busy. She had to coordinate the spells of her doppelganger, and she also had to pay attention to Nightwing's battle. The enemy kept shooting dark red energy beams, and Nightwing, an ordinary person, was struggling to hold on. "Phew. Great, you have the ability to transmit telepathy. You are much more powerful than I thought. The one trying to enter your world is the greatest demon in the multiverse, called the Three Palace." The young girl was obviously relieved. She was afraid that the other side would not be able to respond to her. Now that both sides could communicate, the chances of success were much higher. Thea was not happy at all. She only felt that she was extremely unlucky. She was only supposed to save Jason and Yarrow Fay, and visit the farmhouse in Nandabat. It was a day of fun, but it turned out that two worlds were working together to seal a great demon. The script changed too quickly. Unsurprisingly, the person on the other side of the phone was the daughter of the three palace demons, the famous black-bellied beauty raven. Unknowingly, they had interfered in her first attempt to seal the three palace demons and helped her father open up the second battlefield, which led to the series of events that had unfolded before their eyes. "I know about the three palace demon, a great demon of another dimension. My seal is almost complete." "What do you mean?" Thea had already sped up her movements. Her doppelganger was still able to find the time to cast a few acceleration spells and defensive spells on the Nightwing. "What I want to say is that I can't hold on for much longer." The young girl's voice and the sound of the barrier breaking rang out at the same time. A dark red palm that was 10 meters long and 2 meters thick suddenly drilled out of the barrier. The aura that accompanied the palm was filled with pain and anguish that burned people's hearts. Thea was shocked and almost scolded out loud. "You can't hold on anymore? You should have said so earlier. Why are you here as well?" Thea stared at the young girl who was only 8 or 9 years old and was a little speechless. "Let me help you. I'm very powerful." The young girl was wearing a black cloak that covered everything above her nose. As she spoke, she cast a few restraining spells to bind the demon that was chasing the Nightwing. Thea almost spurted out a mouthful of blood. "Help me. Help my ass. Shouldn't I be the one helping you? Why am I the one in charge? What does this have to do with me? Logically speaking, how can you tell that you're helping me?" Looking at the incomparably huge palm, one could imagine how big the main body was. Thea pointed at the palm and asked in disbelief, "You can't seal this big guy?" The young girl Raven looked at Thea as if she was looking at a retard. "How can I seal him? I was just delaying him. He's the biggest demon in the multiverse. Don't look at me like that. I know what you're thinking." Thea was extremely unhappy at this moment. The young girl Raven glanced at her. The two beauties, one big and one small, snorted at the same time and turned their heads to the left and right at the same time. Thea looked at the barrier that was constantly shattering. Obviously, without Raven's restraint, the opponent was breaking through faster and faster. Thea knew the strength of the three palace demon. Superman, Diana, and the Flash couldn't break through the defense even when they joined forces. In the eyes of the three palace demon, these three were just a little stronger than ordinary Earthlings. They were just ants that weren't worthy of him personally taking action, not to mention her own skills. Once the three palace demon came out, it would be best for her to immediately take Moira and the others and run away. The problem came back again. She had to take advantage of the fact that he hadn't come out yet to beat him back and seal him again. Because the node of Nandabat had been broken, it would take some time to repair it. She had to resist the three-palace demon while repairing it. Except for those who couldn't be named, Thea really didn't know who else had this ability. Seal? Thea stared at the god of death staff that she had just gotten 2 days ago. She didn't understand the sealing function in the staff. Could it be that it corresponded to today? As the number of events she participated in increased, Thea became more and more confused. She definitely didn't participate in the original process of the event, so how did they do it? Or was it that the timeline with her participation was real, and the others were just stories in movies and comics? She raised the staff and waved it gently in her hand, and an obscure and inexplicable energy formed in the air. "What are you going to do?" Raven asked. "Seal him," Thea answered concisely. After that, she flew up and used the staff as a spear, piercing the giant hand. The idea that the staff transmitted to her was very vague. It wasn't that she couldn't do it, but that she failed. "Help me hold him down," Thea commanded Raven on the side. This demon princess had been entangled with her father for a long time and couldn't deal with the whole person. Now it should be no problem to deal with a hand. Raven proudly raised her nose, raised her arms, and rolled up a huge shadow behind her. A very human-like crow composed purely of shadow energy pressed down on the struggling giant hand, only the wrist part was exposed. "Hold him down, watch me." Thea had roughly understood the principle of the staff. It could seal, but it had a probability problem. It was impossible to seal the three-palace demon at once. After all, this was only the god of death staff, not the god staff. Puff. It didn't work. Puff. It still didn't work. Puff. Puff. Thea treated the big hand of the three-palace demon as pork, and poked it again and again. The probability of the staff's seal was very touching. Every time it was poked, Gideon would record the success rate. From Thea's estimate of 20%, it fell to 0. 0.25%. "Hey, can you do it?" the cynical Raven asked. "Yes, it'll be done soon." Thea was busy sweating. She didn't know whether she could do it or not. If there were other ways, she wouldn't do it stupidly. When Gideon calculated that the probability was reduced to 0.0007%, he saw that a large group of non-attribute energy suddenly gathered on the staff, rolled back the bead curtain, and the energy wrapped the giant hand, rolling all the way to the other side. Chapter 386. This mass of energy looked familiar. It was clearly the power of the rules. Just like Diana's lasso and Thea's arrow of vengeance, this staff was also added with the power of the rules when it was forged. However, the sealing rules were far more powerful than the rules of revenge and truth. The quality was higher, but the quantity was much less. This was the main reason why the staff's sealing probability was so low. This demon must be completely sealed. Your ability can restrain him. "Come with me," the black-bellied lowly raven said cheerfully. "Okay." Before Thea could say anything, Batman, who only showed his face after killing the monster, agreed. Thea thought about it repeatedly. The other party could not resist the power of the staff's rules, which meant that the other side was not too dangerous. She nodded. Hearing that the other side was Hell, Nightwing, who had been chased for a long time, was also very curious and wanted to follow. Even though Raven Lowly couldn't tell what kind of magic these two men had, she didn't object to it. After tying up the son of the three-palace demon who jumped out, the four of them took the captive and went to the other side through Raven's teleportation channel. "This is hell." Thea looked at the surrounding environment. The surroundings were filled with the main color of dark red. The sky was wrapped in thick dark clouds, and the soil on the ground seemed to be soaked in blood. The gray ground was mixed with dark red, and it looked particularly uncomfortable. "Come and help." Raven Lowly interrupted their observation and said hurriedly. Thea, Batman, and Nightwing also saw the huge body of the three-palace demon. This was a giant with a real height of hundreds of meters. It had the same appearance as its sons, with bull horns, white hair, and 3 pairs of eyes. However, its pressure was 10,000 times stronger than its sons, and its aura was 10,000 times more evil. Just by getting close to it, one could feel its aura. It was an evil that could tear one's soul. However, Now a large mass of unknown energy gushed out from the left palm of this great demon. The energy quickly covered its upper body and half of its head. This great demon was mobilizing all its energy to resist the sealing power of the rules. Use your divine artifact, quick. Raven once again summoned the shadow of a raven and firmly bound the demon's feet. She also saw the power of Thea's divine weapon. She didn't expect Earth to have such a strange weapon. Although the probability was low, this was the only way. Thea looked at the great demon. Although his legs were bound, he was not stupid. His upper body was resisting the seal while his lower body was struggling. Lolita Raven would not be able to trap him for long. Looking at the great demon's struggling feet, Thea thought of the magic staff's low probability of success. She created a clone and passed the magic staff of the god of death to her. Her clone was perfect for such a dangerous job. His main body, on the other hand, wore the yellow light ring and released all of his emotional energy. Then, he conjured a yellow chain on the foundation of the raven, binding the great demon's legs tightly. Batman and Nightwing, on the other hand, began to deal with the various imps and sons of the 3 demonic palaces that appeared around them. Along the way, Thea and Raven also diverted part of their attention to provide magical support to them. Time passed extremely slowly. Thea's clone was still attacking the great demon's toes. The great demon lived alone in a place similar to a valley. The surroundings were blocked by dark red mountains and there was only a small path to enter the valley. Batman and Nightwing firmly guarded the entrance. Thea summoned the elk to help them block the gap. She took out the divine longbow and aimed at all the demons that could fly, killing them one by one. Facing the increasing number of demons, Batman and Nightwing used all of their skills, throwing all kinds of smoke bombs and magnetic bombs. In a cloud of smoke, Batman changed into a pitch-black iron armor. His strength, speed, and defense skyrocketed. He was not afraid in the face of the swarming demons. With his powerful strength, thick defense, and his skillful fighting skills, Batman alone bore 70% of the pressure of the demon army. The few of them fought hard, but there were too many demons to kill. They were killed in 1 second and resurrected in the next second. Batman, who was full of energy, was now a little tired. "Are you done?" Master Bat grabbed a demon's arm and used it as a weapon. He smashed a bunch of demons until their tendons and bones were broken. He asked Thea a little breathlessly. Soon. The time was getting longer and longer. Many demons with the ability to fly were swarming over. She had to keep killing those demons. The pressure was no less than that of the 2 people on the ground. Thea's clone was still holding the staff and fighting with the great demon's toes. She did not know how many times she had poked and smashed. Just as Thea's main body was wondering if the staff would only work on the target once, the touching sealing effect was finally activated. Just like before, the non-elemental energy wrapped around the 3 palace demons' toes and rolled them up. The great demon, who could only fight with the sealing law, could no longer hold on. His feet and calves were quickly sealed. The 2 energies of the same origin converged at his waist. The demon let out a deafening roar and was finally wrapped up by the sealing energy. The 100-meter-tall giant finally disappeared. A crimson crystal stopped in the air. "What is this?" Raven lowly turned her head and asked Thea. "You're asking me? I don't know." Thea did not know what this was. In the original space-time, this should be your job. If you're asking me, who am I supposed to ask? The 2 beauties, one big and one small, looked at each other blankly. They were a little confused about the situation, but there was no doubt that the great demon king was indeed sealed. Raven used her dark magic to turn the surrounding mountains into a huge rock. The crimson crystal was sealed in the center of the huge rock. Thea's doppelganger was almost exhausted. She handed the staff to the main body and the doppelganger returned to Thea's body. "Let me dig a hole." Thea held the staff with both hands and imitated Atlan, the god of death, in her memory. She slammed the staff into the ground. Rumble. This staff was indeed worthy of its reputation as being able to sink Atlantis. This was a great tool for digging holes. This time, there was no need to consider the probability. Thea did not use any magic power. With just one hit, she created a huge hole that was 1,000 meters deep and 100 meters wide. Raven controlled the huge rock to fall to the bottom of the deep hole. The two of them increased their magic power and filled the hole. They looked at each other and heaved a sigh of relief. When the great demon army saw that the 3-palace demon was sealed, most of them fled. The few loyal ones were also killed by the few of them. Raven brought the few of them back to Nandabat. Thea began to seal the extra-dimensional passage. When she wanted Raven to help, Raven replied casually, "I don't know how." "You really don't know how?" Thea asked again in disbelief. Raven lowly turned her head away arrogantly and ignored her. Another naughty child. Thea was speechless. She could only do it herself. She constructed the magic circle, dismantled the details, and added a few patches to the original foundation. Finally, the passage to hell was blocked. Chapter 387. As soon as she was done, Shadow dragged her to see Yarrow Faye and Jason. After soaking in the pool water, the two had recovered from their vegetative state. However, their minds were in a mess. Barbara and Shadow could only tie them up and wait for Sia, the wise person, to come take a look. Sia did a quick check and wanted the black-bellied lowly raven to take a look. "I don't know these things. I was born with my magical powers." Raven lowly pretended to glance at it and shook her head to show that she did not understand. How envious. Thea was born with powerful magic. She felt like this world was full of cheats. There weren't many people who studied magic as hard as she did. The demon princess said that she could blast her enemies to ashes. She had plenty of practical experience, but she didn't have any theoretical knowledge. Thea could only draw her own conclusions. Their souls were damaged before. Now, with the help of the pool water, their souls are complete. However, this is a supplement, not a repair. The original soul and the new soul will fight fiercely. They will be confused for a while. When their own soul devours the foreign soul, they should be able to wake up. Thea explained her judgment to them. She didn't care if they understood or not. She knocked them out with a finger each. No one could help with the soul fusion. She could only rely on herself. After dealing with the two, Talia brought a group of people and dragged the demonized ninja master over. She wanted to see if the old man could be saved. The old man's eyes were red. He made a groaning sound in the air. It took 4 or 5 people to pull on the iron chain to barely hold him down. It was such a pity that a hero of a generation had fallen to such a state. Thea sighed. She used her psychic power to sense the old man's soul. Then, she used her magic to wander around his body. Can he be saved? Batman and Talia asked at the same time. It was just that the two of them had different thoughts. Batman was very respectful to this teacher of his. Although the two of them had been enemies many times, they had never killed each other. Talia's feelings toward her biological father were much more complicated. She felt hatred, jealousy, fear, and a bit of father-daughter relationship. But more than that, she wanted the old man to die quickly so that she could take over the Assassin's Alliance. Facing their complicated gazes, Thea roughly thought about the methods she knew and gently shook her head. He's different from Yarrow Faye and Jason. His demonization is too deep. This kind of constitution can't be removed. But it can be suppressed. Thea said as she drew several mysterious symbols on Ninja Master's forehead and arms. The beast-like Ninja Master instantly calmed down and fell asleep. Thea looked at Batman. My spell can keep him calm. If you want him to regain his consciousness, you will need more suppression methods. You can ask the Sky Eye Society for some anti-magic metal and make 2 bracelets for him to wear. He will wake up again, but he can't soak in the pool anymore. Optimistically, he only has 10 years left. After listening, Batman pondered for a long time and nodded. He couldn't leave a ninja master in the lurch. But even a fool would know how difficult it was to get something from the Heaven's Eye Association. The anti-magic metal was their weapon against superhumans. Based on Batman's understanding of Amanda, he wouldn't be able to get it without paying a huge price. However, he was a hero of justice, so he couldn't steal it. Batman lowered his head and pondered over the chips in his hands, calculating how he could get his hands on it. Seeing that they were all okay, Thea could finally breathe a sigh of relief. She turned her head and saw the two-faced Lolita looking at her. "Are there many people like you in this world?" Raven asked without rhyme or reason, but Thea knew that she was definitely not asking about her appearance, but whether there were many people who knew magic. "There shouldn't be many," Thea said frankly. Except for a few immortals, no one in modern society could play with magic. This thing had a bright future, but it was not as powerful as a submachine gun before it took shape. The two-faced Lolita was a little embarrassed. She said with a troubled face, "Can you teach me? I learn things very quickly. I have to teach a disciple again." It wasn't that Sia hadn't thought of absorbing the black-bellied Loli's magic, but she was different from Shazon. She had inherited the magic from the three-palace demon. She was born with a strong evil aura. Without any blood relationship, she couldn't control it. Thea looked at Raven. The little girl looked at her a little nervously. "How old are you?" 9. Raven Lolita looked like she was an adult. Thea almost burst out laughing. This little girl was two-faced, arrogant, and very good at complaining. Thinking about it carefully, she was quite similar to Thea's character. And the key point that was different from Billy Batson was that she was a beautiful girl. So it was said that appearance could really determine one's fate. "Well, you can live with me for a while." Thea didn't say anything, but she had already agreed. Raven was different from Damien. She had a huge amount of magic, but she didn't dare to use it because she was afraid of the dark power in it. Thea felt distressed when she thought of the original space-time. With no one to teach her, she had wasted a mage account with great potential. In fact, there were some tricks in the process. As long as she gave some pointers, Raven's strength would develop rapidly without any side effects. Although there were few magic classes in modern society, there were always a few. The use of magic had changed from the rough and explosive type to the delicate and simple type. Modern magic was most suitable for Raven, who had a lot of magic but poor control. A few outsiders looked at them from afar. They saw Batman and Talia talking in low voices. In the end, he sighed helplessly and walked slowly toward them. Talia turned her head and returned to the Alliance team. In the end, Talia gave up on her man and son and chose power. Thea sighed. She didn't have any say in Talia's choice. She just felt that this woman was also a ruthless person. Or it could be said that after living in the Assassin League for so many years, the position of the organization in her heart was more important than anything else. "Let's go." Batman's voice was as calm as usual. He, who was proficient in psychology, might have already seen through Talia's ambition. Thea didn't mind. This trip to Nandabat was a busy one. Other than understanding the function of the god of Deathstaff and adopting a little Loli, she didn't gain anything. After opening a portal to the outskirts of Gotham and a portal to Star City, they waved goodbye. Thea led the black-bellied Loli, Shadow, and Yarrow Fey through the portal and returned to Star City. "Your teleportation skills are not bad, but the total amount of magic is a little low," the Loli said with a little pride. After that, she opened a dark portal and raised her eyebrows at Thea proudly. Chapter 388. 3 black lines appeared on Thea's forehead. This child was not cute at all. "Your portal is shaking too much, and the landing point is not stable." She was now very experienced in dealing with naughty children. She went on and on about this and that. She took advantage of Raven's lack of basic knowledge and pointed out 4 or 5 problems, completely dispelling Raven's arrogance. However, she did not just beat her down. She even complimented her appropriately, causing the little girl to pout before raising her head again. "You have good taste." The proud Raven took off her hood, revealing a slightly pale face. She kept looking at the crowd on the street. "I think your father still needs some time to rest. He should be able to recover in about 2 months." No matter how one looked at it, Shadow's relationship with Yarrow Fey was closer than that with Jason. Before leaving, Thea checked old Yarrow again before returning home with Raven. She found Damien, who was practicing his sword, and introduced him to Raven. "Come, I have a mission for you." Tell this little sister everything that I taught you before. Thea gathered the two children together and went back to her room to take a shower and prepare for bed. She could still hear the two naughty children's discussion from afar. You little thing, you know magic too? Only Raven did not eat bean buns as dry food. What? Don't look down on me. Do you dare to compete with me? Accompanied by the sound of a sword being drawn, this must be Damien, who practiced both magic and martial arts. Thea could not be bothered to listen to the two naughty children bicker. Both Raven and Damien knew their limits and would not get out of hand. She was very confident in this. 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. Jason Todd was young and had a strong will to live. He woke up earlier than Yarrow Fay. When he learned that Batman still adhered to the principle of not killing and did not avenge him, he left Gotham alone with a depressed expression. Yarrow Fay, on the other hand, was not as good as Jason in terms of age, experience, or potential. Thea had to treat him again before he finally woke up in 2 months. The father and daughter hugged each other and cried. When he found out about Thea's ability, he was also shocked. His reaction was similar to death knells. He didn't expect Oliver's sister to be so powerful. In Raven's eyes, Thea's magic power was only passable, but in the eyes of ordinary people, she was already unbelievably powerful. The father and daughter reunited for a few days. Yarrow Fay knew that his daughter now had a job and a goal in life. He was very happy for his daughter. One morning, he left a letter and left Star City alone. Oliver, who she expected, did not appear. She couldn't ask Amanda. Thea had to pretend that she didn't know that he was still alive. She didn't know where Oliver had run off to. She had too many things to worry about and was quickly distracted by other things. Thea had been in the metropolis for a week. As an outstanding entrepreneur in the metropolis and even in the United States, the number of social events she had to attend was unimaginable. Most of the time, she could use her doppelganger to attend meetings while her real body slept at home. However, there were times when she had to be present in person. For example, the venue she was in right now was an internal meeting. The full name of the meeting was National Security and Superman-Related Affairs Committee. This was not a tea party where everyone invited Superman to chat. This was a small meeting where a group of people closed the door to figure out how to deal with Superman. Regardless of whether she was a hero of the government or an outstanding entrepreneur, Thea had to attend this meeting. The outside world was sunny, but this place was deep underground. The walls were covered with lead for fear of being heard by Superman. Thea was dizzy as she listened to the speech of a certain general on the stage. What if Superman flies into this room and kidnaps one of us? Will he abide by the Constitution? Does he understand our democratic system? Do we have the means to protect ourselves? The impassioned general didn't expect anyone to answer him. His speech was extremely long, but to sum it up, he had to develop a weapon that could deal with superhumans. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to sleep after fighting for his country for half his life. Thea had no impression of this person, but seeing that he was so scared that his legs were cramping, she knew that he was definitely not a good person. He had done a lot of immoral things. She wouldn't take a second look at such a person even if he died in front of her. Just as she was thinking about whether to have Chinese or Western food after the meeting, she felt a strange ray sweep across her body. Someone is going to deal with me. Thea's lazy expression immediately turned vigilant. But 2 seconds later, she found that the meeting was still going on as usual. No one around her noticed anything unusual. There were not many people in the meeting room who knew her true strength, but there were still a few, including Thea's old acquaintance, General Ryan, who was the vanguard against Superman. Seeing that she suddenly became vigilant, the old man was also a little flustered. He did not know what was going on and gave her a questioning look. Thea was a little confused. She was sure that she was not mistaken about the strange energy just now, but she still did not know what kind of energy it was. She wanted to look outside, but the lead in the wall blocked her view. She had no choice but to take out her phone and ask Digger, who was guarding outside as a bodyguard. "There's no signal," Sia exclaimed softly. Including General Ryan, several people who had been staring at her also took out their phones. They looked up and found that they all had the same thought in their eyes. Why is there no signal all of a sudden? Their persecution paranoia was no less than Thea's. There was only one thought in their minds. Superman knew that they were having a meeting to discuss him, and he was coming to kill them. The eyes of several heavyweights caused the atmosphere in the meeting room to freeze. At this time, a consortium businessman who was talking about the dangers of Superman on the stage closed his mouth and carefully looked at the people below the stage. A few people who were slow to realize that there was no signal on their phones, and a panic spread among this group of elites. "Shut up, all of you, let's go out and see what's going on." The one who spoke was Thea's old acquaintance, Lex Luthor. But before he could take action, the door of the meeting room was slammed open. A large group of bodyguards in suits, guards in military uniforms, and secretaries in professional attire rushed in. Luthor's secretary and Thea's bodyguard, Digger, were among them. The group of people did not dare to be negligent. They jostled each other and ran out. "What's going on outside? Is the guy in the red cloak here?" A guy who could not keep his cool asked his bodyguard. The rest of the people, including Thea, listened attentively. The bodyguard found that n number of bigwigs who could only be seen on TV were staring at him. He told them the situation outside with a lisp. "There is a huge glass dome in the sky covering the entire city. Everyone's communication devices can't receive any signal. You will know the specific situation when you see it." Chapter 389. A glass dome. A bunch of people couldn't figure out what it was, and they all rushed out to take a look. They didn't know until they saw it, but they were shocked. Everyone went outside and immediately saw what the glass cover the bodyguard was talking about. They saw a sky blue cover standing outside the city. It was boundless and had no end. A few people raised their heads to look at the sky, but they could only see that the top of the dome was faintly obscured by the clouds. It was supposed to be working hours in the city, but at this time, everyone was stunned by the sudden change. A large number of citizens walked on the streets. Those who were slow to react were still looking at the horizon, and those who were quick to react were trying to call their phones. However, no matter how they tried, there was no signal on their phones. The crowd was filled with confusion. No one knew what was going on. "Mr. Mayor, the city's power supply seems to have stopped. The remaining power can only last for half an hour. General, the army is unstable, we can't contact the gas company, and the city's heating system will be down soon." The members of the Anti-Superhuman Committee could be said to be the current elite representatives of the metropolis. There were people from all walks of life in politics, military, and business. There were people constantly passing on the news. The leaders were all in a terrible fix. The key point was that they did not know what this scene meant. What they didn't know was that Thea had already guessed most of it. The strange energy ray and the huge glass dome. Others couldn't see it, but her eye of Horus wasn't limited. There were many glass products outside the dome, and there were all kinds of cities in them. Combined with the huge robot walking by not far away, Thea clenched her teeth. She was so F***king unlucky. This was Brainiac's collection room. The robot wasn't huge, but she and the others, including the city of tens of millions of people, were all shrunk. The opponent's ray shrunk in an instant, and then it changed space again. Under everyone's gaze, Thea couldn't fly, and she could only determine that they were on an alien spaceship. As for whether they were in the solar system, it was hard to say. Fortunately, Gideon's main program was placed in the power armor, and the armor was separated by a space ring, so Brainiac didn't notice. Otherwise, even Gideon on the Wave Rider would not be a match for Brainiac, an AI that had evolved to its peak, let alone the current Gideon. His consciousness was eternal, and he knew all the knowledge of the universe. In a way, Brainiac was an immortal god. Gideon could not take it out. Once he took it out, he would betray them without any discussion. It was not unreasonable for the high-tech planets in the universe to ban the development of artificial intelligence. Brainiac could easily think of 100 ways to deal with low-level artificial intelligences, just like how Thea dealt with ordinary people. Several government and business leaders initially thought that it was an experiment by the military. They pulled General Ryan's sleeves and spat on his face. The old man repeatedly explained and finally dispelled their suspicions. Everyone, does anyone know what's going on? General Ryan asked. He seemed to be looking at the crowd, but in fact, he was mainly looking at Thea. After all, she was the only supernatural person present. The old man did not take the initiative to talk about Thea's ability. It was not difficult to guess what he was thinking. In case the situation was extremely bad, he would let Thea save him first. If he exposed Thea's ability, a bunch of people would need to be saved. It would be troublesome if he didn't save who. There was no need to increase the number of competitors. A few people who had the same idea also stared at Thea with bright eyes. They all had the same idea, to ensure their own safety first. Thea chose her words carefully. She did not speak, but Luther did not plan to let go of this opportunity to be in the limelight. Let's go to my lab. My equipment has detected a ray, but the specific effect needs to be analyzed by the experimental equipment. Luther then raised his wrist and showed everyone the high-tech equipment he was wearing. Thea, of course, did not want to watch him show off. She cleared her throat and said, "Mr. Luther, there's no need to go to your lab. I'll tell you now." When everyone on the ground focused on her, she continued, "All of us, including the entire city, have been atomized by a ray. Atomization." The group of businessmen and politicians did not understand what this meant, but Luther did. His expression was extremely serious. The secretary sitting next to him also looked at Thea with a complicated expression. Luther's originally calm face finally showed a trace of panic. This field was too difficult. Although he had dabbled in a small part of it, he was still far from being a master. His smart brain was thinking quickly, and before he knew it, sweat had appeared on his forehead. Thea saw this scene and snorted. In fact, Thea did not know much about this field, but she had all the information and notes of the Atom Man atomizing people and then reducing them with the field of expertise of the Atom Man. In terms of intelligence, Ray Palmer was definitely not as smart as Luther, but Luther's research was too broad, while Ray Palmer only focused on one field. In terms of depth of research in the field of Atom Man, Ray Palmer was far better than Luther. "Miss Thea, let's talk aside." General Ryan and a few other high-ranking officials who knew about her abilities pushed Diggle, the black bodyguard, to the side as if they were fighting. They pulled Thea to the side to talk. The black man had served in the military for many years. Although he was now retired, he still obeyed the generals reflexively. Seeing that General Ryan was pushing him aside, he did not know why the old general suddenly used so much force. He was a little confused and looked at them from afar. "Is there any way to get me out of here? I have to report to the minister. Yes, I have to report to the president too. I have to report to the Congress." A few people surrounded Thea and asked in low voices. "A bunch of rats." Thea despised them in her heart, but she did not say it out loud. She used her heart to feel the magic flow, and there was no problem at all. Although she did not know where she was now, she was not worried at all. It was just within the scope of this universe. The light ring allowed her to travel through the universe, and the divine bow and arrow could travel through time. She could not understand the feelings of these old guys. "Everyone, don't worry, listen to me slowly." Thea first calmed them down. Old Ryan was still okay, but one of the senior officials could not stand still. "Although it will be troublesome, I can send you back." First, she gave them a reassuring pill. Sure enough, when they heard her say that, they all breathed a sigh of relief. Their expressions were calm, their legs stopped shaking, and their teeth stopped chattering. "But I just said, maybe you didn't hear me clearly. I'll say it again, all of us, including this city, have been atomized. Do you understand what this means? We are now only the size of an atom. The outside of the city is not a canopy, it is a solid glass cover." Thea's words were like a hammer, hitting their hearts, and their faces became extremely ugly. Chapter 390. Thea ignored them and continued, "Even if I send you back, you'll still be in your current state. This is the power of science, not myth or magic. You won't be able to report this to the president because you're too small. They can't see you. The phone is as tall as a mountain in your eyes. You're probably just a little bigger than a microorganism. Even an ant is countless times bigger than you. Do you still want to go back? Thea looked at them with a half smile and said, your families are all in the city, right? General Ryan's daughter, Senator Harry's mother and son, and Miss Emily's husband. These people can't all live like microorganisms, right? They fell silent. Thea didn't mention one thing, but they could all think of it. It was power. After all, the army couldn't obey a general who could only be observed under a microscope. The same went for the government officials. The voters couldn't go out and watch them give speeches with a high-powered lens. Then do you have a way to restore us to our original state? Someone asked Thea. First, I have to find a wavelength that can make us smaller. Then, I just have to set up an inverse matrix using the isotope principle. At this time, I can stimulate the atomic structure. In modern quantum mechanics, Alan Fest has a theorem. Okay, we get it. They quickly interrupted Thea's long speech. None of them cared about what the F*King quantum mechanics said. They just wanted to restore them to their original state. Unfortunately, their voices were a little loud. The rest of the people, including the bodyguards, also came over to listen to what they were saying. Thea was secretly pleased. Where did prestige come from? Wasn't it brought by turning the tide at a critical moment? This incident was very suitable. She could solve it with the theory of the Atom Man without revealing any superpowers. Everyone, listen to me. Today was not a formal meeting. Thea didn't wear her old-fashioned business suit. Instead, she wore a V-neck white shirt with a navy blue skirt and strappy heels. Now that she had put away her lazy aura, she looked like a sharp sword. Her cold eyes looked around at everyone. Everyone who met her eyes couldn't help but quiet down. Like I said, all of us, including this city, have been atomized. We need to maintain the order of the city and find a way to save ourselves. An old man in the crowd stammered, "Will Superman come to save us?" Thea almost gave in to the old man. 10 minutes ago, he was still incessantly calling on Superman to abide by the Constitution. He wanted to develop a weapon to deal with him, but now he thought of Superman. He picked up his bowl to eat, then put it down to curse. This person's skin was really thick. Can Superman care about everything you do? When the house caught on fire, Superman went to save it. Because of Superman's existence, we no longer cared about where the source of the fire was because of Superman. You don't have to follow the traffic rules when crossing the road. Superman will come to save her. She definitely won't die because of Superman. Everyone, I didn't see Superman anywhere today. We can only rely on ourselves. Thea looked at the crowd coldly. There was sparse applause at the scene. This group of people had not completely abandoned their integrity. After all, they were all here to hold an anti-Superman rally. It would be too ironic if they counted on Superman to save them now. Even the conceited Luther clapped twice reluctantly. Between being rescued by Superman and dying, he might have swallowed his anger and chosen to live. But now that it was not a matter of life and death, he agreed with Thea's words. It was just a pity that he did not say it himself. In fact, Thea was not lying to them. She really did not see Superman in the city. She saw many acquaintances, such as Louise Ryan, who would appear wherever there was danger. She also saw the wife of the black man beside her, the mature woman of the Heaven's Eye Society, Lila Michaels, and her own subordinate, Poison Ivy. But as for Superman, she really did not see him. Miss Quinn, do you really have a way to solve the current situation? Luther asked in disbelief. Although it's not a sure thing, but this is my plan. In order to boost the confidence of this group of people, Thea explained the process and principle of her anti-atomization to this group of people. The group of politicians and generals looked as if they were listening to a book from heaven. Their expressions were like, but Luther really understood. Although Thea did not talk about the details, he knew that this plan was feasible. Moreover, it was a technology derived from the current level of technology on Earth. This made Luther extremely unhappy. Superman was stronger than him, and he could say that it was because the other party was an alien. But now, Sia, an Earthling, was suppressing him in the field of science that he was best at. This was something that he could not tolerate no matter what. He was too proud to lie through his teeth. He only understood about 40% to 50% of Sia's theory, and he was wondering if there was anything he could improve on. Luther lowered his head and calculated, trying to find the flaws in her theory. He had to save some face. Thea was not going to let him go. She asked slyly, "Mr. Luther, I heard that your scientific research ability is very strong. Do you think there's a problem with what I said?" Luther put his fingers on his temples. If he was in a wheelchair, he could play the role of a younger version of Dr. X. But no matter how fast his intelligent brain worked, he could not find the flaws in Thea's theory. In the face of Thea's question, he was forced to the edge of a cliff. His brain was almost smoking. Combined with his own knowledge, he could only conclude that Thea was completely correct. As for improving or going further, he could only say that it was a dream. No matter how smart he was, he would not be able to reach Ray Palmer's level without at least a year and a half. Luther's smile was uglier than crying. "I have no problem with it. Miss Quinn's theory is feasible." The few people who knew him all made unclear sounds at the same time. They looked at Sia and then at Luther. Luther relied on his intelligence and looked at these politicians and generals as if they were retarded children. Sarcasm were commonplace. From time to time, he would tell a few lame jokes that made these people feel awkward. Now, he actually admitted that Thea's theory was feasible in front of everyone, but he did not put forward any new ideas. What did this mean? It meant that Thea's scientific research ability was also redeemable. If they did not miss the opportunity, they were ready to talk to Thea about the new weapon. They were really fed up with Luther's constant show of superiority every day. Thea looked at the silent Luther with great satisfaction. Physical destruction was not a skill, but it was a sense of accomplishment to be able to knock him down in what he was best at. As for the fact that this knowledge came from the Atom Man and did not belong to her, Thea did not care. After all, no one would expose her. Besides, the Atom Man was still wandering around at this time. No one would have an opinion if he said that it was Thea's theory. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,